I got to get a little closer to my eyes ain't what they used to be. You know, I got cataracts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll be great about it running out of energy.
Can you get a copy of that for me? If it's not too personal, give me a copy of that.
No, because we got a protocol on how to get this stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna go, yeah. Yeah, but I'm just, still, in other words, like this, this is routine. When we bring things to the table, we always make copies. We don't do simple copies. This is so that we can intelligently analyze and say, well, I'm looking at this now, right? You know, though I've seen it before, and different form, but pretty much the same form. I recently did barcodes before they didn't have barcodes. You know, it's supposed to be efficiency. But always specific. If ever you get anything,
No, I don't. So this is where I want food. Could you
the other
maybe
bring out
move
to
them?
discuss.
Open up over here.
That's
Oh, we can do
routine.
it, please. I'm just,
Now,
yeah.
the other deal is that whatever
And then we can let the
territory
aisle open.
that you're domiciled, you build up dossiers, you build up a database. And of course,
Such a bar and the other brother.
whenever there's any communication, whatever, you go to this database. That's automatic. Yeah, no, I'm talking about us.
Can I, you need?
Protocols. All right? Now,
Plum.
That's why I told you I need to come by 6 or 8 times. Yes, sir. That's what we'll do. Let's go.
oh, just as an information, Amanda, my neighbor, is selling her extra Black Law Dictionary for 65 notes. It's a 4th edition deluxe. I want to go over, wait till the brother gets settled in.
Dinners for 5 minutes.
We got these shirts.
I got one.
We got it on the counter.
Oh.
Flare cheese, so. If anybody's interested in them.
Dr. Naila does her specialties. She got veggie bean. Oh, she got a lot, like everything. 5 notes. Support the house, support yourself, good food.
And guess what? We got a little sister here tonight.
Sis, you bring your baby up on our camera and introduce her again. Brothers and sisters, we got a new family member. She's 6 months now. I remember when she was a bump.
Seven.
Yeah.
She's 7. She's 7.
Huh?
She's 7 months.
7 months?
Oh, yes.
Time flies. Pretty soon. You want to introduce her?
This is Eliza Jane Ali L. Born May 3rd, 2015.
Mom, Mama.
Yes, ma'am.
Is she beautiful, y'all? I want everybody to make sure that you send your energy out so she don't have to battle that we're battling. Right?
She was born at home, right in my room. I said she was born at home, right in my room. Probably a good 10-hour labor, and that was that. Never gone, no immunization shots. Never gone to any doctors.
Well, she had us from her mother. That's the immune
Yeah,
system.
breastfed, and I even have placenta.
Pretty so.
And she ate her, and she reconstituted her placenta and took the reconstituted capsules of her own
Right.
placenta. Yes.
Now,
Oh, you know the culture.
you know what that polio shot is
You
for?
know the culture, mama. Yes, I got the culture, mama.
That polio shot that they came up with talking about
Islam.
polio back in the day was for
Islam.
the Europeans because polio came through eating people, eating flesh. That's where polio came from. So they're trying to make everybody, as we got
Oh, yes.
polio, it was for the Europeans because they ate flesh. So that's where that came from. So I wouldn't even give her that, you know.
Now, for your research purposes and for your edification, it's important to understand the Moorish Divine and National Movement is a political, social, spiritual forum that in its nature and character is a countermeasure to Roman operations under Unum Sanctum Dum Diversus, Romanus Pontifex Inter Caetera Divina, the Sister V Act of 1666, collectively referred to as the Doctrine of Discovery, which is the foundation of the politics on the planet Earth in these modern centuries, in these contemporary centuries. It's important for everybody to be aware of that, and so once in a while, we have to redundantly remind everyone because they have a tendency to forget. And in either not knowing that, not being aware of it, or forgetting it, we have a tendency to, one, underestimate those who are governing, or assuming they don't know certain things, because these things are not discussed. You know how, like, because things are not discussed in public, people assume that people in positions of authority in alleged government and in institution agencies, it is often assumed by people that they do not know because certain things are zip-lipped. Are we clear? Other things, people have a tendency to think that their so-called quote-unquote black leader guys, whether they're from the church, mosque, or synagogue, are not privy to this information. That's another fallacy. Well, they absolutely are. Keep this in mind, and I know it's difficult for a lot of people because a lot of people get attached to organizations and to things of people that they participate or associate with, and they develop biases. You know, whether it's your cousin, your uncle, well, my uncle's a reverend, he's an imam, things like that, and you have a tendency to think that they don't know these things because they don't discuss these things. However, that's one of the greatest mistakes that we've made collectively as a people, and that is that we have a high degree of highly cultivated naivety, which is why we're always behind the 8 balls. You know, we keep going down, like going to a casino, we keep losing, and we keep calling them crazy. Every time I go down there, I get my lunch money and all that stuff, and my mortgage and my car payment, and I keep losing. Them people is crazy. No, you're crazy for thinking that you're going down there to win. Same thing. Do you understand? Keep this in mind. It's very important for everybody to know. And this is redundant, but I'm going to say it again. For the average people, and that includes people that are not present, and that includes the eggs unborn, there's a general assumption that people who are, say, Masons, Eastern Star, Skull and Bones, Knight Templar, Knights Columbus, Knights of Malta, Daughters of American Revolution, Grand Sheiks, Sheikesses, Imams, Rabbis, Reverends, etc. There's an assumption that because these people belong to different organizations, that they have a completely different body of knowledge. Untrue. They have different bodies of dogmas that are in front of the knowledge that gives them their degree, that gives them the PhD title, that earns them that position. Are we clear? And I hope I said that, made myself clear there. Yeah. Meaning not unlike Like say if we're going to a university or college or university, and one of you may major as a doctor in the medical field, some may major as a doctor in a specific area of medicine or anatomy. Some may deal as a doctorate in mathematics, in engineering. Some may deal with a doctorate in linguistics, orthology. Some may deal with a doctorate in biology. However, the fundamental education base is roughly the same, are we clear? And then you have what you call trivial or branches and subdivisional branches of any discipline upon which someone may extend or enhance a fundamental degree. Are we clear? Now, anyone that's like say a rabbi, imam, master mason, Eastern Star, Knights Templar, Kaitos, Ku Klux Klan, Union Guard, Grand Dragon, all of them are Gnostics. And one of the greatest problems that we have with people when we're trying to help liberate them is that they think because they're in different houses that they absolutely have no knowledge whatsoever about the other God, other clubs. They absolutely do. It's sort of like, and it's not unlike, one of the things that I've always done as I've traveled the country and dealt with different people, but you find a lot of people that are out of pain and misery and they get tired of the BS, finally start shedding their naivety and leave mosques and churches and synagogues and come to the Order of the Great Seal eventually, while coming through the North Science Temple of America as an elementary degree. It takes a while for them to shed their naivety, and they usually have their belief systems in front of facts until a few years, and they get beat around a little bit. And then they come to reality and recognize, the Alice in Wonderland thing type stuff. And they grow up and put away their childish things, like when you hear the statement in the Septuaginta, or what people call the Bible, or Torah, and they'll say, when I was a child, I did the things that children do. When I became a man, I put away my childish things. It is exactly and absolutely the same thing. And of course, that is actually a representation of an ascension of degrees, are we clear? So what you're saying is you graduate, so you come from what is called the belief degree to the scholar degree to the fruition degree. And the fruition degree is the PhD. And so a fruition degree is where you have adeptus, and a fruition degree and masters are all relative, they're synonyms, are clear. And so when you're dealing with a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, they know this information too. If you're dealing with, say, President Obama, he knows this information. Deal with a congressman, they know this information. Deal with a senator, they know this information. Deal with your mayors and council people, they know this information. Many of them do not get down and study maybe the way you do, but they're made privy to this. It is a requirement for them to hold their degrees, are clear. No different than, like, say, for instance, if you go into any structure or discipline, like, say, for instance, you're dealing with the science of government, governmental sciences, right? You must learn civics. And so you learn fundamental principles of constitution and treaty laws because it's run the world. Are we clear? How astute that person may be, they may be at different degrees, but there's no such thing as they don't know. And this is where the masses keep making their mistake, assuming people in position of authority or power don't know. No, they choose not to discuss those things with you because you will find that they are compromised or corrupt. They're literally parasitic. Do you understand? The uncomfortable truth is this. Preachers, politicians, pimps, are all profiteering parasites and brothers. And it doesn't mean that every one of them have necessarily a negative intent, necessarily. But what they know and what they play on the public is absolutely two different things. And is never discussed with the masses. This is, again, when you come to a privy council, this would be what you call a privy council meeting. A privy council meeting is where controversial information is dispensed that's generally not given to the public. Are we clear? And is usually preserved for secret societies, and even then it's not given this clearly. Are we clear? It's usually coded in allegorical stories, signs, and symbols, and you're left, in mystery, and you will pay out the pocket for generations before you even figure it out. And when you do, you can't talk. In this degree, you talk blunt and on the square. Are we clear? So it makes some people, they find it difficult to handle because it contradicts most of what they believed, not knowing that beliefs are elementary. You know what I mean? Now, those who know that that their elementary degrees aren't offended. Those who are locked in the belief degree usually are locked in what you call an invisible fence of self-servitude, slavery. They're self-enslaved. But it's not without the design of the priesthood that has taken place. This is again why it's unpopular amongst so-called priests and reverends and imams when it comes to the exposure of this information in venues like this. You will never usually see them present. Well, and they will usually put it down or misrepresent it to those who don't know in order to discourage them from listening or researching. But again, as you all understand, when you come here, we command that you come here with pens and paper and do research, and we give you reference points. Of course, you're charged with proving it wrong. And of course, when you try to do that, you will find not only what you don't know, you'll find how much you don't know, and how much you don't know about what you don't know. And then you'll find out what you don't know about what you learn to know, and that there's even more degrees upon those degrees. However, we must get you to a level foundation in order for what you will receive later to even make sense to you. However, it is important for you to have a fundamental foundation of the operations on the planet Earth in order for you to be self-inspired and willing to study and to put the time in to really do the work for yourself. Because most people who have been trained under the John D. Rockefeller Education Board operate by training, and that training is do everything by the pharmaceutical company. That means take a pill and everything's supposed to be solved. And so they don't have that spirit or that mentality of research and to really get down and educate themselves. They're under the impression that when they go to the John D. Rockefeller Foundation operations, that they're getting educated. However, they're being trained in docility, which is a subject matter you will find out on your own when you do the philosophical research on the John D. Rockefeller General Education Board set up in 1902 after they murdered Queen Monona in Philadelphia, etc., to steal the territory. And keep in mind, when you deal with the Capitolium was there. And of course, that's a history within itself. And brothers and sisters, Seth and Roz in the house tonight. I want to give him a hand. And his brother has been sacrificing, and his wife has been such a great support of and he's been holding down the classes in Philadelphia territory at York House for years. And enough cannot be said for the appreciation that goes out to him for the sacrifices he's made in an honorable manner, because you have a lot of people who have had this information, but you have very few people who have executed this position honorably. He is one who has been executing his position honorably. Can you please stand up, Seth Rock? I'm going to get his brother a hand. But I want to make this point because over and over again, there's so much for us to learn. However, concept is so important because there's such a bevy of information that's coming out and that's been exposed that we can get caught up in the details, and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't misunderstand that, because you should pay attention to details. However, there's certain aggregate pieces of information that everybody needs to be assigned and aware of. Are we clear? Because it will give you a foundation to see everything else. Are we clear? Are we clear? When we give you different pieces of information over the years, it is not without designed intent. It is realizing that we cannot give you in a couple hours of a lecture, or any lecture, enough medicine to counter what Rome has had hundreds of years to do. However, there is a fundamental truth in divine law and nature, and in mathematics and electronics, and in engineering logistics, period, that operates, that's outside the venue of political manipulation. And that is this. When you send out energy thoughts, or thought energy, and you are consistent and you do the best that you can to keep it pure, because we are in a physical body and therefore we're in the conflict of the upper and the lower world. And if you can maintain a level of energy output above the midpoint, or what you call above the chest, the stomach chakra, getting up to the heart chakra, at least there, you can start making what is called a discernment between the physical and the abstract, or what you call the breath, or the man, etc. And it's a fine area to work with, because you have to kind of be careful, and that's not like a fearful statement. You have to be careful, because you will become sometimes abstract and people will not understand you, because you don't necessarily hold the same values on the physical as some people expect you to. You know, because they expect you to be running after carnal desires all the time, and you, not that you're not subject to them, but you're not as subject to as many people are, because your mind changes. Your mind changes with the energy in your body, so does your cells. And so you have to be cognizant of the degrees that people rise, so that they don't mistake your intent. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then be able to sit down and communicate in that carnal realm without being too subject to it, yet you are subject to it all the time. You know, so that's a fine line, just to give you a point of thought. But you have to be able to, you have to come to a degree of having the capacity to go ahead, as we would say. According to how dogmata is given to the masses, dogmata is actually counterfeit religion. All right, so we throw these words around all the time: law, religion, money. And one of the things that must be clear with everybody here is that the masses don't get religion, they get dogmata. And the masses don't get money, they get fiat and private commercial paper and private securities. They don't get jurisprudence, they get law unexplained, which is a subcategory of jurisprudence. You know, so, but again, I'm only saying that to say to you that all persons with degrees, or all persons in positions of authority relative to Grand Sheikesses, Master Masons, Eastern Star, Knights Templar, Skull and Bones, Knights of Malta, Daughters of American Revolution, Dragons of the Caicos, Ku Klux Klan, Union Guard, White Camellia, etc., 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 are all Gnostics. They are Gnostics to different degrees, but they're all Gnostics. So minimally, they get Gnostic wisdom. And minimally, they all are aware of generally what we call the books, the philosophies, which would include, you know, Septuaginta, Bible, Tanakh, Pentateuch, Hexateuch, the Vedas, Urantria book, which we would call the books of air, fire, earth, and water, astrology books, cosmology books, ephemerides, etc. They have them all, and they know that the different books are for different lords, as opposed to the masses who usually are the followers or the believers, and the believers either just have a Quran by itself, a Bible by itself, Torah by itself, etc., and they're locked in these little fences. But yet the people who stand before them, who are teaching them, i.e. the so-called imams, rabbis, and reverends, got all the books. But what they usually don't do is expose that to the masses. Are we clear? Because they would immediately recognize the corruption. And of course, then you will understand the story that they will tell you that most people are familiar hearing about when they talk about Yeshua, who they renamed Jesus at the Nicene Council. And they talked about he was down disputing with the doctors of the law, i.e. they were doctoring of the law. Now the lesson, that is a great lesson because it's really telling you the dynamics of what's actually going on in the real world, of social engineering and politics. And this is why you will see the reverends and the imams and a lot of the people, priests who stand behind the pulpit will condemn masonry while in fact, in secret, most of them are Masons. Because masonry essentially is a preservation of the sublime and supreme knowledge of the human experiment and experience on the planet Earth, and preserved and given in degrees by signs, symbols, and allegorical stories. However, our conversation with you is blunt, without secrets and without trickery. It is absolutely necessary because the people that are dealing with the theft of your birthright and that are running the planet are highest degrees of masonry. Are we clear? From P2 masonry, from the Vatican, right on down across the planet. And understand that the fundamental preservation of the truth of the human experience is known across the planet, and anyone that's in a position of power must have them degrees in order to govern. Are we clear? So when you talk about people, whether they're so-called, and I'm qualifying what I say here, mosque, church, or synagogue, pretend that they don't know Masonic lessons, and they tell you that they're lying their keisters off. Because if they got them Gnostic degrees, and if they're standing behind that pulpit governing some finance or some people, you understand they got Masonic lessons. I don't care what they tell you. You understand? Because they ain't going to be in that position, because what happens if they didn't know the truth, what they would do, they would use their emotions and their biases, and they would undermine the corrupt institutions that are governing this planet today. Are we clear? It would break down the hierarchy, artificial hierarchy that was set up under the doctrine of discovery. However, this is only said to you to remove your naivety. So when you see so-called Muslims, Christians, or Jews in videos and everything condemning masonry, you understand that's part of their social play. I mean, they don't believe what they're saying to damn self. They're saying it because if you study it, you would understand those books that they have after you travel in the mind a little bit, and you'd recognize that they've been playing you. And of course, then their club's over. And of course, their club is over. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because they're in the pockets of the people. So keep in mind, I want to say this to you so you have an idea. And we're not talking necessarily your fraternal orders of Freemasonry set forth under European auspices. We're talking about Moorish science, which is really what Masonry actually is, under what you would call Renaissance men. Now, for your notes, so you give an idea, I'll write down the Renaissance, 13th century to the 16th century. And the Renaissance, and those of you who are referred to as Renaissance men, you may refer to in these days as Masons or Freemasons. Are we clear? Whether you're dealing with those who are under Wysock or any others, including the Illuminati. Are we clear? We're talking about the knowledge. We're not talking about the political agendas. Do not confuse political agendas that may be untoward with the fundamental truth of knowledge. Are we clear? Just like, like when you see the Septuaginta, the Bible says the sun shines on the good as well as the evil. That's how you must look at the knowledge. Are we clear? And remember, the masses suffer for a lack of knowledge, not a lack of belief. They got tons of belief, but they don't know that beliefs are elementary degrees that are to be shed. And we have the unfortunate situation that the dark priesthood have preserved belief systems as the pinnacle and made people think that belief systems are the pinnacle when belief systems are the elementary grade. Are we clear? As an example, symbolically in geometry, we would use the triangle with 120-degree angles, which equals 360 degrees, as a symbol of geometry when you study geometry. Are we clear? Now, everything basically that we deal with in what you call the carnal or the physical plane is not necessarily dealt with only on 3 degrees or 3-dimensional. However, in general, that's what's generally given to the public. Are we clear? Are we clear?
Yes.
However, all priesthood always understand that there's other angles or what you call more degrees. Are we clear? The Gnostic character of the Bible, Quran, Uaspi, Vedas, Urantia book, etc., Bhagavad Gita, all of those books have a Kabbalistic background. Are we clear? All of them. All of them. Are we clear?
Yes.
And upon ancient study, they do not conflict either. The way they're presented causes conflict, but the Gnostic wisdom behind them do not conflict. Are we clear?
Yes.
The conflict is created by the priesthood to divide people so they can protect their interest, their financial interest in their clubism. And plus it keeps the masses from coming together in unity and love. For they learn to love, they learn to hate, and divide themselves. It's called, the military term is called schismata. So dogmata and schismata are the two tools that are used by the dark priesthood in order for social controls to be maintained and managed. Are we clear?
Yes.
And what I'm telling you is not speculation, it's direct. It's not synonym, it's not like synonym, I'm telling you directly what's used. Dogmata is counterfeit religion. Schismata is divide and conquer, military term. And it's applied in all logistical sciences of social engineering. Are we clear? Whether anthropology, biology, history, jurisprudence law, social and political sciences, etc. The reason you're given this information, again, and this is redundant, is to begin the process of you slaying your own naivety. Are we clear? I will discuss this in a minute. Then, but we were talking earlier, and I want to show this to you, particularly because eventually this is where you were all going. You know, not the Library of Congress, but we're talking about the clocks, because that's your culture. Do you understand? All of your sheiks, all of your rulers would have this information. It would be in different degrees or different entry points, but the same foundation knowledge. Are we clear? Meaning that if I were talking, say, to Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, right? Before you, it would appear conflicted. Sitting down with you not around, he'd probably buy me coffee. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? As an example, just as interim, just an interjection. In 1991, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went down to Atlanta. I traveled down there from Philadelphia, from Jersey area, actually. And I was going to, there was a movie out called Living Large at that time. And I was going to Ponce de Leon Plaza to go see the movie. And I was traveling in one of my cars. It was a Chrysler New Yorker, white with a red tufted interior. And I had the seals and stuff in my back window. And it was this blue Chrysler New Yorker, identical to mine, was following me down the boulevard. You know, just behind me. They pulled in behind me. And then but they had all these, the Confederate flag. They had these flags on it, and they had the cross through the crown. And that's Knights of Columbus. Cross through the crown. In hoc sic no vinces, in this sign we conquer. That's what that means, right? Anyway, so we had to pull around behind the back of the plaza, you know, to go to the theater, the park. And they pulled in behind me next to me, right? And so when I got in the car, I went to, going towards the steps platform, and they got out the car. It was two men and a woman, Europeans, right? And they walked real fast in front of me, right? And they got up on the step and stopped, right? So I walked up on the step. Now I'm expecting negative. You know, they got the Confederate flag and the crossbones and all that stuff. So when I got to the door, they moved to the side. She bowed, and both of them opened the doors and said, "Top of the morning to you." Now I'm ready to box. I mean, you know what I mean? It was totally unexpected, to be honest with you. And it took me a minute. It spoiled my movie. You know, really, because my adrenaline was, you know, they don't know Frankie here, you know, Frankenstein. Anyway, no intention to lose. But, and to be honest with you, immediately, it did, you know, I couldn't figure it out. You know, and after a while, actually, a matter of weeks, not really immediately, you know, I recognized, knowing what I know, I went back to my knowledge, not to emotions, what is expected, and understanding that they got a chloran too. They got a chloran, you know, and the structure of the Klan, you know, for widows and the children, etc. And they know, with my degrees, that I know Horace Greeley and the Whittemore, and Zodiacus, and the Jacobian principle of the hybrid. You know, at least they expect that because my degree was in the window. And then you know, it kind of dawned on me, because then you also have a lot of Europeans that don't know, that ride around calling people niggers out the window and everything, assuming anybody they see that's melanated, you know, but they don't know who you are or what your degree is. You know, but that was an experience that really made me recognize not to take things for granted all the time. You know, because everybody's not everywhere you think they are. You know, however, I also know that in public they wouldn't do that. Meaning that if a lot of people are around. You understand? Because they recognized me, I didn't recognize them, to be honest with you. I mean, I just assumed they were Klanners and, getting ready to do their thing, and I was going to do my thing. We going to do. Yeah. But as an interim, it also gave me pause to recognize and to think about the dishonesty that's amongst our own people. You know, because to be honest with you, it took my mind back to when I was younger, and I was assistant minister in the Nation of Islam. And then most of my personal friends, you know, people come to my house that I was used to, like Muhammad Ali, you know, Joe Tex, different singers, different celebrities that most people know. And knowing our conversations were different than they were or are when you're out in the general public. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Then after a while, understanding that according to your degree is where your conversation is. But also coming to the realization that, the masses just don't, for the most part, don't get it, because they're really never told. And not so much because sometimes they aren't. It's sometimes when a signal is given to share or to bring them up, they reject it, or they get hostile or defensive, and then no more is said, and they're allowed to stew in their nigger juice. And I find this common, and so, but it's a personal thing with me on some level. I have to admit that. I'm not going to, lie to you and say other than what is true. I'm sort of a rebel, sort of a rebel's rebel, sort of a rebel. And I've always felt that every man, woman, and child should have an opportunity to honor their mothers and fathers by being simply told the truth, not given some allegorical story that it takes them 10 to 20 years to figure out, and then their life is over, and their families are suffering, and then they want to judge other people for not understanding that which they know is given to them in trickery. So why judge someone who doesn't understand? If I say to you, my left heel's stuck up my right nose or my left ear, and then, fart twice, and it means something else. I'm saying that a little exaggerated, but that's pretty much what it boils down to. If 2 and 2 is 4, say it. If somebody wants to reject it, fine. But if somebody wants to know sincerely, you told them, and then they're responsible, And my position is, in order to make give humanity a chance to accelerate and then not be destroyed, I think it's unjust for the priesthood to hold the self-righteous position of having the Gnostic wisdom themselves play these silly games, always contributing, having what you call the believer degrees or the entered apprentices paying all the bills, while all the grand sheiks, the potentates, and the past masters and everybody else, live a grand life, and in secret know that these people don't know what they got. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But they raise them up just enough to divide them against their own families. Because they get certain truths, they give the assumption that they've risen, or that they come they've come into the living perpendicular from a data level. Do you understand? Encompassing the square issue, or what you call the carpenter's tools. That's in your chapter 5 of the Circle 7 Quran. And there's also in the story of Jesus being a carpenter when he walked with Joseph, etc. This is why some people say Jesus was a mason, which he was. He was a mother's son. That's all of you are. You ain't got to be in a club to be a mother's son. You got a belly button, you're a mason. So quit it. So get off the ego trip and all the other crap. But the deal of it is, our issue is to bring some remedy to humanity. And particularly knowing that our people are the heirs of the world's largest estate and have been most long in time and endurance of having lack of access to their lost estate. Therefore, when Dwali came on scene in 1911 and solidified his operations in 1912, and then affirmatively established the Old Canaanite Temple in 1913, it was time. So that means the karmic debt or the reciprocity had been balanced out. And so understanding how divine law works, it is the appointed one for anyone who's assigned to dispense this information to do it honorably and not to do it under any selfish means. Now, mind you, I recognize and I understand that it takes finance to raise a nation. I understand that a servant is worthy of his hire. However, any point that there's a penny over in an extorted area, it becomes absolutely corrupt. And what you find is that that's constant with us. That is also one of the motivations of why I founded the Round Table in 82. After traveling and dealing with multiple organizations and recognizing so many people always talking about they got the truth and talking about they want to help the people and they want the children to have self-esteem and we love our youth and all these things, and most of their efforts were to line their pockets. And the conditions of the community never changed. And they always stay away from controversial subject matters that actually attack the order, meaning the order that actually subjugates humanity. And that was one of the motivations as to why I founded the Round Table. However, as a synopsis, for those who don't know, because many of you, some of you in this room are members of the Order of the Great Seal. And as you already know, with the evolving and the demographics growing across the country, and actually outside the country too, and the vast communication, although it's been going on for years anyway, and so many people have been laid back. But because of the accelerated affairs on the planet, find it necessary to inform you on certain things, because even some things that we do that you all know in the Order of the Great Seal are actually out of protocol, meaning out of sequence of protocol, but by necessity of the volumes of people, because many people that we deal with are across this country on the islands, some in the UK, some in Germany, and Japan, one or two in China, and Dominica, Puerto Rico, a few other southern states, Ecuador, some of the American states that we've been named, people that I've communicated with on a basis over the years. And many of them are aware, but logically, it's not like they can come down 602 Vandiver and, seal their papers or do some kind of, just the normal stuff. And then because of the politics, the in politics, meaning that some people come in are less than honorable, and they corrupt the platforms. But that's also by design, if you understand. And so, some of the protocols, I could give you some more stories about some things that took place in the land of Nod. But I won't go through that right now. But there was some particular brother of the order who even went to Washington and tried to change the numbers up, and did that to block people from the process to lock them out, because he was also selling government papers and selling packages for, I think it was $3,600 or something, like stuff that we give to you all for free. And my particular lesson book 14, A1, the same way that Dr. York used, and the same one that this other brother Nakeem used, etc. We're teaching government. And a lot of other people generated a lot of finance for themselves. The stuff I was giving people for free. For years, they was getting, $3,600, some $4 or $5 grand in New York. And then we started the Heritage School in New York after going to the House of Consciousness up on 128th. And of course, I met a lot of celebrities up there. And they had about maybe 15 or 16 different groups teaching more science. Within a year, most of them were shut down. And so, Brother Aziz and Sister Majid, etc., which many of you know because they're famous around the world, she's famous for her jewelry, asked me to come up, and we started coming up on 125th Street, but the crowds were blocking the stores. It got so busy. And so that's when we started going around to the theater at 5th and 125th at the Cathedral Room. And of course, as you already know, this is the 9th year, and Ross Mariah and Eders is running that class, and they've been running that class astutely for all these times. And I've been there on a regular basis for the last couple of years because I've been stretched dealing with so many other venues. However, most of those other venues have shut down. Meanwhile, as people come on board, many of them are not aware that a lot of the information they get is Great Seal degrees, because we've shared it on many levels. However, as people come into the Order of Great Seal, we want people to be competent, and we want people to be capable of raising their families and their friends as a countermeasure to the dark priesthood, because as we accelerate, the dark priesthood accelerates. However, we do have momentum in our favor. Even though we have small numbers, the energy of thought is strong. And the energy of thought creates what is called a light. And that energy of thought has been powerful enough that it has moved other nation states and even moved the Pope to make his visit. And this is why when you read his letter, if you'll see the Pope's letter, civil letter, if he didn't have his name on it, you think it came from us. You know, but there's a countermeasure, and this is because of pressures that's going on around the world. But nevertheless, particularly for us, for those who are coming into the Order of Great Seal, I wanted you to be aware of this, because brother, would you want to tell your experience in our conversation, if you want to?
Sure. Islam. I'm Brother Rui Ben Israel, and this is my beloved family. A couple of months ago, me and my family decided to, we made a conscious decision to support a sister who was selling tags on behalf of the nation. And we thought it was a good idea to support the sister, so we did. You know, policy enforcers are doing what they do. Upon us exercising our right to travel, they decide 2 o'clock in the morning to pull me over, you know, the routine, arrest me, da-da-da-da-da. So I'm scheduled for a court hearing on December the 15th at 1:30 in Howard County, Maryland. Not with any fear or anything like that. This is a divine national movement. It was not accidental or coincidental that this happened. It happened because it's a divine movement. And we are aware and prepared, so to speak, to go to the fire or do whatever is necessary to bring about redemption for our people. So all we're doing is asking for brothers and sisters to get behind this in any kind of way that you can, i.e. with thought. The brother just expressed on thought and how important and how powerful thought is. Our ancestors were very, very wise, and I'm really starting, as I fall more and more in love with this movement and studying, I'm really starting to really understand myself, which is our ancestors, and how intelligent that they were. Seeing things and being in things and not being in things is almost like past, present, and future, that you're in past, present, and future all the time. And you're no longer in darkness, but you are aware. Does anybody understand what I'm saying? I mean, we are really aware. And it may only be a small percentage of it, but it, as the brother said, it's very powerful. And the ancestors are always continuously giving us confirmations that we're doing what we're doing rightfully, lawfully, and we're on time. So that's very important. We must understand that we're on time. So all we have to do is just stay true to ourselves, to the movement, listen to our higher self, our lower self, and our inner self. and we will be victorious, because we've already won. You understand? We just living out the book. Islam?
Islam.
So, yes.
What's the date?
December,
On the date you're going.
say it
The
again,
date that you're going,
December,
If it's closer to the mic.
December 15th, 1:30 in the afternoon.
yeah, because the 21st is the planet shift and the change, the 21st. That's when the energy comes to the planet. So meditate,
Islam
that
is
everything's in our favor, but we have to collect that energy just like they do. They do it for years, it's ours, but we don't have knowledge to understand that. Meditate.
Islam.
Do your meditation, it's gonna all work out. Be surprised.
Yeah, well, and upon our studies, you know, then my queen and my family and I have come to the point of now coming to the order of the Great Seal. It's a divine movement, and everybody a part of divine going to end up in the same place at the same time, doing the will of our Creator. And that's what this is all about, being true to thyself. And with that, I say Islam.
Islam.
Islam. Now, just as a point of reference, excuse my semi-drawing. Just as that's the glyph of the earth, or earth glyph, right? And then there's also at your master seal. And of course, we will go in and you get either your 333s or your fall, winter, summer, spring, your gates, which we told you, those who know, in the book of Revealing or Revelations, 2 and 1 is 3 degrees. That's where you get your 3 gates in the east, in the north, in the west, in the south, etc. That is your zodiac constitution. For those of you who know the history and know when, like the Europeans, when they do the so-called birth of a nation, why Philadelphus is the area. And for those who've been to Philadelphia, and you step back and look at City Hall, and you'll see it's Ionic and Moorish architecture. And it has a parapet at the north gate, and it's dark in the north gate, just in that tunnel. They always keep it dark in there. And then you'll see the zodiac in the middle of the courtyard with the 4 gates. It'll be like this. Of course, a square, as you all know, your core of it is like this. That's the core, and then it has these sort of like exclusion squares here, sort of like that. Right? And it has south gate, north gate, east gate, and west gate, and your zodiac is right there, right? And the parapet is up here. And of course, Billy Penn's up here. Masonic Lodge here is right across the street, number 1 North Broad. And then right here, just inside here, there's a grave pit there with a brass rail. The cornerstone is in the grave pit, not on the outside the building. Then you'll see pillars up in here in the dark north. And you have Asiatics holding up the pillars of Atlas, signal, Morocco, you know, they're giving you your signals. And of course, your Mummers Parade ends here, right here at this point, and then the judgment is made, and they pass the Grand Lodge there. And of course, your Parkway, birth canals up there, shaped just like an ankh from the air. And then the Great Mound, you'll see the Art Museum from the air is formulated just like an M, the matriarchy. So they'll tell you everything. Then you got your Schuylkill and Delaware, and those like your fallopian tubes, the waterways. Then at the base of the step is Eakins Oval, Ovary, Suburb Canal. Then you got the nations on both sides. And then at 18th Street, 3 6s is the flag of the Popes of Rome. You know, only they're telling you in the geography. But they know that the masses can be, you can talk to them right in your face, you can put it right in here, and they'll sell doo-doos, peanut butter sandwiches type stuff. You know, you can't, it's like talking to a brick. Do you understand? However, getting past that, AA 222141, give me yours, and then make a note on the ones pages that are missing. I'll get it. Now keep in mind that's the registration number to one of the certificates, and it's not total subject matter. So I'm just going to go into that so you have some comprehension of it. And also why I did this book years ago, because I recognized years ago when I was when they had East Coast meeting of the states and some people from outside, but it was mainly Delaware Republic, New Jersey Republic, Virginia, West and Virginia, Carolina, New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Those are representatives from those different territories that I recall on a surface tip. And in 92, 93, I was elected as the mayor of Shekiabi territory, which would be the New Jersey territory. At that time, it was very active amongst the Moors, and I've maintained that office ever since. And also, when I recognized later certain corruptions that were there, I did Lesson Book 14 in order to counter the schism that I saw being introduced by some COINTELPRO operations. So you got to outthink them. And see, and one of the other issues is, and one of the other rules is, when you're in any adeptus degree, or if you're minister, rabbi, imam, grand sheikh, etc., to even hold those titles, you're obligated to produce literature and it must be made public. It's not optional. People run around with titles and don't produce literature are frauds. These are fundamentals that you must know already in that realm or in that area. But I want to read to you so you'll have a comprehension. This particular, and at the same time, this was split. There's another after this that I deliberately didn't publish at the time, because at the time, you know, in early 90s, actually it was like between 89 and 90, and then I published it in 96. And of course, a lot of people's head wasn't in this direction. A lot of people, you know, thought I was out for lunch, but I was actually fighting a dark priesthood. So I had to set some things in front of them so they could put their foot in their mouth later. And so I separated the book because they had the power of the institutions and finance. I had only this. And the little fiat that I had before I ran that out, I used to give people stuff freely, and I used to cook 3 times a week. And I did that for 9 years until it broke me. And I did this as a counter to the priesthood. But I knew that in time, once people really caught on, that people would come in, but then also that a lot of concepts would have to be corrected, you know. But I was depending on a few people that had any integrity or honor, like this brother over here, that would dispense this information from an honorable perspective and I knew the work would eventually be done. But deal, so that you understand. This double A is the highest level, now quote unquote, do not mistake this, it's only brought into the category of citizenship. Do you understand? But national is above citizenship in the concept that you understand citizen. Do you understand? But it would be listed under that category for study. Are we clear? Yes. So you have national, citizen, alien, subject. Are we clear?
Yes.
And you don't want to be them two down the bottom. All right? Mm-hmm. This is why when you do your mail, you do non-resident, non-subject. because of the world trust set up under unum sanctum, you're assumed to be their subject, unless you stand up and speak up. And if you stand up and speak up, be qualified, which is again why you study. You understand? Because they already know who you are, they already know your culture, they're controlling your estate via their world trust under unum sanctum operations. And so therefore, you know, all politicians already know this, but they know the masses don't know this unless they belong to a higher degree in secret society. And even then it's given an allegorical story. And so what they do to take the place of the Sultan, they set up a grand commander in the imperial divan to imitate you. Do you understand? But their tassel must be tied. You understand? All right. That's just another story, so you understand. But anyway, AA highest level, national. And AA will go from A to A1 all the way up to A19. These will be different categories, which will be, you know, you'll get that information later because there's so much other stuff that you need to know before then. So that's the highest level, national. 222141. All right, so let me read just an intro. The copyright certificate, or CMA, is registered in the Copyright Office of the Library of Congress. Remember, to understand even some of the strategies for operations of the Order of the Great Seal and people coming in as candidates is to protect the order and understand always, at all times, you have COINTELPRO black box operations to undermine it at all times. Are we clear? Therefore, you know, you give information to people and you trust that the honor that's in them and the love for, like our little sister here, if they have enough love for them that they will not allow the corruption in their heart and their carnal desires for having everything now, not to overwhelm them in the material realm, to set forth a foundation for the preservation of the estate for her.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Now, because of COINTELPRO operations, for those of you who are adeptus, you are already aware, some of you are not, but for those of you who are adeptus, are aware of the FBI papers with the infiltration into the Moorish Divine National Movement, what they call the Great Sellout Period. This is the period where people like Father Divine, Daddy Grace, Farad Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, Bishop Cherry, Bishop Johnson, Father Divine, all these guys had this information with Noble Drawley, including Marcus Garvey, etc. For those of you who know, when Drawley visited Marcus in the prison at Atlanta, and most of them try to hide those letters. I got the letter, you know. As well as many people try to hide the relationship of the Temple of Islam, which was a break-off during the COINTELPRO operations, or the break-off of the Moorish movement. And then Sweet Daddy Grace, and why he has the crescent and star on the top of his buildings, what they call House of Prayer, etc., and the Lions of Judah. Those are signals, you know. However, so the Great Sellout Period, people are confused about the estate and about the birthright issue. Are we clear? And most of the people got caught up in the different groups, schismata, and lost focus. Now, the different groups is not wrong. Don't misunderstand. Don't get that twisted. The foundation of what was supposed to be given to them is where the people have been violated. Are we clear? Because just like you're giving this information, you're to take this to the hedges and the highways. Do you understand? However, you must never do anything that negates the right of claim to these people's estate, which is the whole political issue on the planet Earth today. Are we clear? And all the other philosophies or belief system, that's BS, tomato soup reduced. It ain't got nothing to do with what you call the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is the lost estate and European occupation and the distinction of what is called impostorship. Like the European talks about it in that movie they made in Philly called Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. All right, they're actually telling the story, but actually they're telling the truth of the story, but the stock is really stock against the people, and the real Grand Commander, or the real actually sovereign, is actually Eddie Murphy. But he's actually looking like he's trading places under some untoward circumstances, and he's playing a role when actually it's the reverse in reality anyway. That's a whole different story, but that's it. But let me get into this. AA, highest level of what you call citizenship, is the national. Title 22, this is the United States Code of Law. Title 22, Foreign Relations and Intercourse. And of course, knowing that you would have COINTEL cooperatives amongst us and others who would try to dispel this information, I left the page number, which is 954. So that those who would try to counter it would have reference points. I also want to add in my conversation with you, which is not in this section, it's actually in the second section. Eisenhower, of course, the Europeans already know that we've been dealing on this planet, from the beginning with other brothers and sisters from other planets. It's never been a secret amongst us. However, it's a secret amongst the masses. Even part of the problem that we have, and this is another story, we can get into this, it's usually given up at a Privy Council, but that's in the discussion with the problems that we have with the hybrid. And like the European talked about the problem in another way when he made the movie Frankenstein, Frankish, Franciscan Brotherhood, the strain genetics, as Frankenstein, human experimentation, or in the French, the Moor Island, in French, Dr. Moreau's Island, they're telling you even now. These are some things to consider, like at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, like when you're traveling or something like that, to analyze it. Part of the problem that we have, some things were introduced that wasn't looked for, or just like anything that you experiment with, you have expected outcomes and unexpected outcomes. And we have a little bit of problem here because there is some untoward energy also that took place with that experiment. Although the experiment was intentional for actually so-called improving humanity and also trying to preserve humanity because the earth was split because of some misuses of nuclear powers actually millions of years ago. And it's been ongoing even thereafter. And in the last, say, 500 years, there's been a sort of like a semi-quarantine taking place because there's been a little bit more visits than was intended for this time because other people have some other interests. And so we have a problem where Eisenhower made some deals during that time, which we will not get into right now, that's problematic with us today. And that also has to do with going back to the Yakubian experiments in the Yucatan in old Central Africa. This is why you see Manly P. Hall, who's the most respected Masonic scholar in the world, although he never went through the lodge, when he talks about the Kabbalistic background and he talks about the regalia, he doesn't go to Egypt, he goes to the Yucatan. Same thing with Sitchin and all real scholars who know that that's the key right there, the Yucatan. And that's another story for addicts, but just to get you in the right frame of mind. So anyway, foreign relations and intercourse, chapter 2, that's where you get your third 2. Consular courts. Therefore, and this is where, in the order of the Great Seal, we're issuing things to them, it will come from our consular court. And of course, the signatories or the sealers would be indeed verified adepts of the order of the Great Seal. And anything less than that would logically be fraudulent. This is one of the reasons why you see me so patiently, and sometimes even with economic and time sacrifice trying to get people qualified, because when it all boils down, they already know who you are, they already know what you're supposed to be about. People get this information and they keep on trying to reinvent the wheel when they need to be themselves. But they need to know themselves to be themselves. And just because no one's talking, don't you think for 1 minute that from the presidents on down, presidents, not president, presidents on down don't know the order of the Great Seal and why they can't speak under it. And yet, it's always around them, are we clear? They can only speak under the bird, because that's their sanction, because we're the sovereign. Do you understand? It's just that the heirs are incompetent or they're dirty. And our job is to clean them up to make them worthy. Not, they can only make themselves worthy. But I'm just saying to expose them to such information that they would be willing to clean themselves up and then take positions in the affairs of men in honor. And start presenting, not representing, presenting themselves to the world and taking their place among the affairs of men, qualified and not naive and not blinded by their belief systems. Because belief systems are corruption. They will corrupt anyone. Are we clear? However, they're fine for children. But when you become adult, you put them little blocks away. Don't go to the malls and sit in the middle of the mall playing blocks with the boats and the little numbers on them and expect people to be impressed. However, you do keep them for the children who come, but when they get a little older, they're supposed to be able to calculate in their mind. And then a little older, they're supposed to be able to calculate astrologically with geometry, with their compass and the square. And they begin to know the higher self and the lower self and understand how to deal with it, including understanding the history and the 12 and the 13. The 12 and the 13 is what? What is 12 and 13? How much is 2 and 5? How much is 2 and 5?
7.
So you must understand that cycle. So you must understand your measurement of 12 and your measurement of 13 and the matriarchy. Are we clear? So you want to get into that. Now, section 141. Judicial authority generally to carry into full effect the provisions of the treaties of the United States with certain foreign countries. You must understand that foreign does not mean distance, it means jurisdiction. Are we clear? The ministers and consuls, not councils, consuls of the United States in China, Siam, Turkey, Morocco, Muscat, Abyssinia, Persia, and the territories formerly a part of the former Ottoman Empire, including Egypt. That's a code. What is Egypt? Chapter 47, capital dominion of the Moroccan Empire. What is the Ottoman Empire split during the 1884 conference in Berlin, Germany? It was the dividing of the Moorish Empire amongst the Christian nations under the subtitle of the Ottoman Empire. This is why your secret Treaty of Verona is introduced into the congressional records during that time. So you look at your date on your Treaty of Verona and you will understand the politics. Are we clear? So when you think that people don't know this stuff, don't delude yourself. Do you understand? Just because it's not discussed. Are we clear?
Yes.
Now, duly appointed to reside therein shall, in addition to other powers and duties imposed upon them respectively by the provisions of such treaties, respectively, be invested with judicial authority described in this chapter, which shall appertain to the office of minister and consul, and be a part of the duties belonging thereto, wherein, so far as the same is allowed by treaty, and in accordance with the usages of the countries in their intercourse with the Franks or other Christian nations, and then you have a bevy of law case to reference for anyone that has any dispute whatsoever. When you understand this, you understand the foundation which Raleigh says, help me in my great missionary work to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. He's telling you what the mission is. Now, this is your adept degree of active, as opposed to passive. Are we clear? In masonry, it would be called operative instead of speculative. Are we clear? Same thing. Great Seal's operative. Are we clear? Are we clear? All right. Now, a little further, just to give you some supports, and we'll get into some just interchange and maybe some general politics. Chapter 22, Title 22, Chapter 22, Section 141. Now, 141, the officers mentioned in Section 141 of this title are fully empowered to arraign and try in the manner provided for in this chapter all citizens of the United States charged with offenses against the law, committed in such countries respectively, and to sentence such offenders in the manner in this chapter authorized, and each of them is authorized to issue such processes as are suitable and necessary to carry this authority into execution, RRS subsection 4084, chapter 22, chapter 2, section 143. That's 142 and 141 that I just read. 143. Such officers are also invested with the judicial authority necessary to execute the provisions of such treaties respectively in regard to civil rights, whether of property or person. And they shall entertain jurisdiction in matters of contract at the port where or nearest to which it was executed, and in all other matters at the port where or nearest to which the damage complained of was sustained, provided such port be one of the ports of which the United States are presented or represented by consuls. Such jurisdiction shall embrace all controversies between citizens of the United States and others. Isn't that diversity? Provided for by such treaties respectively. So as you can see, the subject matter is here. That's what this is for. Now, first of all, then you understand and comprehend why you have the Zodiac Constitution, why you take it there, how your Divine Constitution bylaws taken there, right? Clearfield Doctrine. Now, when you understand what their obligations actually are, you'll understand why the coup took place in 1861, and then they solidified the coup in 1871, and then with them not telling the people that Abraham Lincoln, 360-degree Master Mason, last Republic president of the legitimate order. Are we clear? Give him a mic. Now, I want to say this before you continue for everyone's. I want to, I chose to read this because we talked earlier. And I also want you to see how blunt and how straightforward and how you ain't got to jump all around the bush and find a lot of different stuff because you already got it. It's just to comprehend what you have and understand that that magistrate's already obligated to this. Do you understand? And what happens is that we usually, and it's not that it's wrong, keep trying to find case law. You can reference as supports, but they don't give you anything. You're already here. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? And people who know better would like to make this stuff complicated and then extract finances from people when this stuff is not complex at all. What it is, you need competent people who know this by heart in the nature, and when they come at you, hold them to their obligation. They're Masons. It's just that if you don't know their obligations, you start looking for some other remedy, which tells them that you're incompetent. Because if you're Moorish American, you got a fez on your head, you're supposed to already know this.
The bell's going off.
Right.
It ain't a matter of a school of thought. And if you don't know this, he already knows that here's an heir to the estate talking trash, don't even know what their estate is. Comprehend?
Yes.
I had a question. Islam, right? I had a question, but you answered it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, and this is why you see redundantly over the years that certain things I'll present redundantly to the point of boring. But I recognize until these people are baptized, you're not going to do anything with them. Because they got to be reborn with a new mind. You know, we can talk tons and tons of subjects for the sake of you want to do something different. Well, what good does it do if the foundation that is put upon is weak? When these people go out into the world, we're still getting beat up. They're still suffering the near problems. You know what I mean? Because the foundation of their concepts is incorrect. And so what they have is they got tons and tons of data, tons and tons of information. Not dismissing it, it's important. But the fundamental foundation upon which they're standing on their heirship, they themselves don't recognize. That's why I did this book. And that's why I split it in half. So it wouldn't be too cumbersome, you know, and then also to counter COINTELPRO operatives within, knowing that some would misuse it, but also in doing so, that's why I didn't copyright it, because I knew they'd steal it. But they became agents with their greed. Do you understand? But it got out there. You get the point? Now, other point, people's opinion, one way or another, is irrelevant, except when they're in belief systems. Then they got a bunch of opinions, just like everybody farts. You know, they get stinky about it, but these are fundamental facts that can't be disputed. So, when you go in there and go to your zodiac constitution, and ask them, say, well, now, I know, and you know, and I know that you're traveling, man, now, come off it, and you know what your obligations are. Now, this is what I want you to do, Freddie. Since you claimed, I know you're not, because it's really that prosecutor from that foreign corporate state that has no jurisdiction, that's in violation of our covenant, that's trying to steal my birthright, and you know that's what he's doing. He's doing the human trafficking, trying to fly to me. You already know, number one, he's counsel for no one. Number two, he's a member of the Barristers Association, enemy of the United States Republic. House Committee report. You want me to introduce a report on that? Oh, he has no license either. Should we go further? Or should we talk about how much time I'm spending here? Because you're all going to compensate for this, you know this, against my estate. That's how you start talking. Now, first thing, you should have never hit the floor, but since we're here, you'll be receiving a loaded cost schedule. A bond of everybody here? Carry the bond? Because I know you don't have no delegation of authority or operation, because I think your order was shut down in 71 with the coup that took place, and I think it was reaffirmed with Skull and Bones member Franklin D. Roosevelt. I think it's House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June the 5th of 33. No, you want some more information? Oh, Clearfield Doctrine. I think that what we should be doing is calling the federal marshal to have him arrested for even bringing this stuff into this tribunal, claiming to be a court and making claims against my estate. How about that? Meanwhile, you notify the Archbishop of the territory. Why? Because under the Christian Black Codes, all of the districts of Morocco was divided into regencies. And the archbishops are in charge of the different regencies. Right? Mm-hmm. But then, if you're operating correctly, you're in a regency too, aren't you?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
And from your consular division, or your court, or your chapter, either the Mir Qazi issues a sealed document from that consular court to that consular to that court, which ain't consular, to notify them that they're out of order. And if they need some more support, there's the Archbishop of the territory, who's their boss, who's representing the Pope of Rome under Unum Sanctum, who's agreeing with us. What y'all got to say? Do you understand? You understand that? Let me just read a little bit, because I'm putting this in perspective. Really, I'm actually putting this in so that you can comprehend that. So let's just read a little bit of the Pope's attorney.
While you're doing that,
Go ahead.
if I didn't ask a question.
Go ahead.
My queen and my daughter and I.
Get in the mic, please.
My queen and my daughter and I, we work together, with the falling humanity and dealing without documentation and so forth and so forth. We all have the same issues. We all submit the same documentation.
Yes.
We've submitted same documentation to the Vatican League in DC. They honor theirs, they don't honor mine, return mine, and honor their request, not mine. Why is that?
They're all rude. The deal is to attack you because they're removing protections from them. That's that's a cotton wig attack.
That's the line.
Cotton wig. Because remember, it is the cotton wigs that carried you in the corner and strike you in the head. They thought they buried you in the corner in the dark north. And then George Washington closed his eyes by saying, "Whoa, great shallow, ain't it? Hiram ain't dead."
There you go.
But that's not that it ain't their intention. Do you understand? Therefore, it is incumbent upon you collectively to step forth and start demonstrating your competency. Because remember, you're the grand architect. And so you're supposed to know how this government is structured. Architect's not just building, it's also government. It's also language. Pull out your compass and square, cut off his ungainly parts. All swords aren't necessarily visible. But he'll recognize it when you pull it. Start showing it. But you come in peace. But remember, when you walk in the tribunals, they're acting a fofer, and a trustee are identical. Meaning they're synonymous. It's just that fofer is more specific to a feudal law operation. So the United States Corporation Company operatives are fofer operators, imposturing as legitimate trustees over the stock of the people in the World Trust, subcategorized and self-franchised under United States military operations of the Jesuit order for the Popes of Rome, which is why the Pope himself had to come out and speak to start turning this thing around, because they've gotten so rogue now the world's after them. Are we clear? So all of the motive is not necessarily, we're not going to judge it as necessarily moral or legitimate. We'll say heat or fire is raised, and so certain things are being done on the planet, and you need to be aware of it. And this is why you contact the Archbishop. And this is why we, tell people over and over again, and it's not without understanding or comprehension of how things operate. I understand how things operate. This is why, like 10 years ago, I did that video in Connecticut talking about the dangers of the UCCs. Not themselves, but the fact that people usually enter that venue not knowing that these people are rude, and also not knowing the foundation of the politics. When what you need to do is be yourself and start making your right of claim on your estate and going after their bonds as a routine, as a protocol from the beginning. And you make a claim against their bond. It could be what you call a non-judicial action. It doesn't even have to go through a court under the common law. But for the common law to be effective, you must be in your proper person. And also, you must be a party. Keep this in mind. This cannot be emphasized enough. You must be a party. Now, what is meant by a party? A party is not just by circumstance or controversy. A party must be an identifiable party provable as a beneficiary of the heirship that's demonstrated in treaties and constitution, both of which are what is called national wills. And if you're not of Moorish descent, you can't use that treaty as a defense. Thus, you can't use the Constitution as a defense. Because why Obama went to Hikupta, that was not accidental. Hikupta, what is Hikupta? Egypt. And exposed to the world that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law. He's telling you. And then, as an adjunct and support, Michelle goes to the Alhambra at the same time. What greater signal could be sent to you? Last stronghold of the Moors before the Romanus Pontifex. And then they come back and sign the rights of indigenous people for these people to declare their nationality. I mean, what else do they want the man to do? I mean, what, they need more sacrificial lambs? Do you understand what I'm saying to you? In other words, everything has been done to try to inform these people to get in their proper status to fix this thing. And the only thing that blocks these people is these black leader guys in their dogma systems who keep guiding these people, and then others in and outside of the Moorish movement that keep misrepresenting the Moorish movement as if it's some religious belief system instead of estate restoration, which is exactly what it is. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? It's trying to take some heirs that are out to damn lunch to get them in an area where they can be declared sane again and capable instead of being minor. That's why we have minority applied. It means, regardless of age, these people are not descendable. That's why you always say you're not Negro, black, or colored. Then you got to look at color, not from complexion, but from the small degree. It means stop being artificial. Be yourself. And so, and keep in mind, and so you do your research in the common law, and you'll see that the common law, or the application, or the recognition of one's application or adherence to the common law is recognized by one's capacity to attach to, associate with, regurgitate, show demonstrable alliance with ancient traditions and customs. And it is this principle all over the planet that trumps the Roman law, the canon law. You know, the straw in Legis was constructed by canon law. Even the stock, the double stock trust set up by the United States Corporation Company to transfer through Wall Street for the Unum Sanctum operations, etc., is built on that 14th Amendment. And the Sister QV Trust Act of 1666, that's what they operate on. So if you understand these things and go back to the state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers and start demonstrating that, you're demonstrating that you are a competent heir. Now, by the rule of heirship, by the rule of trust, at that time, the FOFR or the trustee must release the estate. This is the problem that they're having. And this is the problem that they have in all the world. So they're in breach. So being in breach, the rest of the nations of the earth are coming together to kill the bonds that all the birth certificates, the marriage certificate, the bottom reinsurance, the QSIC number, the original manufacturer of origins on your cars, they're killing the bonds to make them useless. So any nation that buys them, they're going to kill their own economy. So by default, they have to help dismantle this thing. This is what's going on right now. That's what the nature of the Pope's letter. Islam, get this brother Mike.
Right here.
Oh, go ahead yourself, brother. Then.
The information that you put in, just wait. You put it in, you certify it. You're not going to get an answer. Just keep your eyes open, because they'll start disappearing. That's all you can do. Just keep your eyes open. Don't even worry about it, because you put it in.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing you do is call the marshal.
Okay.
Notify the marshal that you're there.
All you got to
No, I'm just saying, you can call them, not only that, that's why now you see where your work is. Research, all this stuff should be in databases. And notify them that you're going to that human trafficking venue under a threat, arrest, and coercion. You know, and talk about the things that they've done to you, and you're going there in special appearance only. You're appearing special and not general. All right? and you're addressing a rebuttal to some fraudulent claims made against your estate. And who is the living man or woman in this venue, in this trafficking venue of human trade, that has a claim against my estate, upon which this action was initiated? Now, step forth. Of course, if he doesn't, then you tell the magistrate, you mean you tell me you brought me and my family here again for no living man, woman who made a claim against my estate, that under threat and armed Europeans with weapons kidnapped me out of my private vehicle on my land in violation of Constitution and treaty, and exercising plenary power on the land, having no jurisdictional powers, no delegation of authority by the Republic's Constitution, operating as foreign private mercenaries, and you sit here and you allow this to take place? I want your bond number 2 and the carrier. But meanwhile, dismiss this stuff so I can go home and look at a movie that I didn't look at. I mean, that's all right. If you understand what's going on, that's how you're supposed to talk. You know, don't even get into the subject matter of those foreign. You find the bond. You find the bond number. The carrier of that bond is usually Wells Fargo or Travelers, and then you make up a claim against that bond, just like when somebody hits your car and keep running down the street. You trace and try to find the insurance company. I don't know who it is, but I've seen the tag. You know, if you got any idea, they claim who they are. You know, city commissioner. You know, they're working for that municipality, right? Now, what they usually have is a cover bond, and a cover bond is a corrupt method of having one insurance policy that covers a lot of people, when actually every one of them should have their own bond. Now, once you start making public those names of the persons that have abridged you, etc., understand that the insurance companies ain't going to take that hit, and they start calling the city commissioner and raising their bond costs. This is how you start getting them. But unfortunately, we have the problem of COINTELPRO operations in the order, and so they have not maintained the Prophet's paper. This is the reason why the COINTELPRO operatives have been grand governors in Chicago and going more different places. Trashed the Prophet's printing press and scrapped it because he told you that that was the most powerful weapon in the hand of your group today, and all of your reports were supposed to be actually put in the public press. Which also is what Great Seal orders for you, is to get you back in that frame of mind to do those things. But again, when people are in a belief degree, it's kind of hard to get them to economically and time-wise support the things that they really need to support for themselves. So I'm just telling you what it is. If you know these fundamental things, just get with some other people that are about it and work towards fixing this thing. You know, because once their name is public, their bonds going up, guaranteed. Then after a while, you start seeing them closing subdivisionals in departments. And then you start seeing them laying off. Why? Because what they've been doing is that to protect themselves, they've been giving people jobs to do their dirty work and rob you. And so they hide behind them. You understand? It doesn't know. They're pawns. They're pawns. Don't be impressed, because they ain't getting it. They're pawns. They're pass-throughs. No different than, like you go here to Washington, D.C., right? Go to the Daughters of American Revolution building, and you'll see sisters in there cooking or cleaning, but they can't be members. Don't get that confused. Because one of the biggest traps they've always done is used us against each other by tying your economies to your suppression of others. See, but the deal is people keep arguing with them or trying to go through their tribunal courts to get justice. No, you go after their bonds. We've been telling people this forever, but we know that people don't listen. And you just tell them to keep it moving. And so you get people together, they'll be together 2 or 3 weeks, and they'll fall apart because they got different agendas. But in due time, the information gets out there. And in due time, as the youth come up, they're going to come up uncontaminated. Are we clear? But your job is to keep the information moving. Because as the people's mind changes, understand you reach what is called mathematical apex. Mathematical apex is an operation in nature, which they will call the 100th monkey principle. And this is where, when you get enough numbers of people that are starting to think about the Moorish movement, even if they're not grounded, it creates an atmosphere. It creates electric atmosphere, and actually it creates a grid work. And actually we can transfer thoughts to other people on the other side of the planet without them having to need years and years and years of study. And this is what the high priest don't want you to know about how the body works, or how this planet works. And this is why they give you belief systems, because it keeps you from understanding the forces of nature, how things actually operate. This is also why they will not teach the masses the 7 hermetic principles, upon which all high priests know that the phenomena of earth operate on, or the universe. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. And this is why, in Masonry they'll call it Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes Thrice Great. In Hikupto they call it Thoth. In Africa, Tahuti. It's all the same thing. In Rome, Mercury. In some parts of Masonry, Shrine was Jove. It's all the same thing. Do you understand? And all represented by the eye, or all the senses coming to one site, or seeing, or what you call Eye of Horus, and they're called Eye of Job. You understand? Or Eye of Allah. All the same thing. This is where, like, when you see the Circle 7, where it says 7 eyes of Allah. So you must understand the 7 sights. So what are the 7 sights? You see what I'm saying? People say that, and then if you ask them what the sights are, then you find that they ain't been taught. Are we clear? Great Seal, that's what Great Seal is for. Give her the mic, please. Wait.
Question, Taj, is it, it's not, I'm just trying to qualify some information. It's not considered perjury unless they put on a stand and held to their bond? I mean, like in other words, they can lie.
They always lie. What do you mean they can lie?
They lie.
I'm agreeing with you, but
they do lie, but until
now
it's not considered legit until, you know what I mean?
This is beautiful. Now listen to yourself. Now, what occurs with most people in relationships? They either don't ask questions, or they ask the wrong questions, or do some kind of testimonial plea Negro civil rights argument instead of the poignant questions, because they don't know the history, they don't know the law. This is why you're taught the foundation, Constitution and Treaty. Hold them to the law. This is also why you have your Zodiac Constitution. Now, so if you don't even ask those questions, that means you've gotten off the forum, haven't you? So what are they bound by?
The law.
When you are dealing with those so-called political heads, it says, give us book 14 for a minute. Let's deal with some principles.
Because some of them don't even have bonds, correct?
Oh yeah.
They operate without their bond.
Yeah.
So is there a chance that the bonds expire? They have to maintain their bonds at a certain time?
Remember, they must have a bond and charter to do business on the land. What occurs is this is why they always hide it. Now remember, the so-called delegation of authority order and the bond and carrier is supposed to be actually posted wherever they're doing business. Just like if you open a restaurant store, like we go next door to that liquor store, right? It's not like, and even if it was just ordinary candy store, don't they have a license and inspection on the wall? So when you go, say, like that stuff right, yeah. Now, so when you go to them venues, you're supposed to ask them for their delegation of authority, their bond, and their carrier, and their insurance company, and their reference. Because they're claiming to be tax agents, aren't they?
Yes.
Where's their tax number? and you gotta pay tax. He said, no, I'm not obligated. You gotta fill out, I ain't gotta fill out nothing. You gotta fill it out.
I just went through that with a lawyer. I had a lawyer for a case about 4 or 5 years ago. He said, do you know what's against the law to practice law without a license? And then I was just sitting there looking at him for a minute, and I was having to say,
Plan, you're saying where you are.
I said, well, let me ask you something. I said, you don't have a license. I said, that's a certificate on your wall right there. That's not no license. That's right. And then he was like,
He's a bond club member.
he was like, yeah, he was like, well, this ain't about me, this is about you. I was like, trying to take it around, so I figured I was like, okay.
Now, see, but when you know better, you don't even get caught up in the stubborn of it.
Right.
This is where, if you're Moorish American conscious, because these people are Moorish Americans, we're talking about conscious Moors. It's not supposed to be a debate with you. You're supposed to know that. And when you go out into the world, you're supposed to already have known that. And if you don't know that, that means who's been teaching you? Who's that brother or sister that didn't tell you what they're supposed to tell you? Because everything is referencing your birthright theft. So you're supposed to know the things which are done or in place to steal it. Because you're supposed to learn the things to counter or rebut the stealing or the breaches of trust. You're not supposed to believe in anything. You're supposed to know, just like if you send me to the store next door to get a juice and a bag of chips, and you send me with 100 notes, 100 note bill, and I come back at 3 cent change, you say, I know you bought the best juice they got in the house. And I know this is brand potato chips and stuff. How you gonna come back with 3 cent? Because what's this called? 90, 99, 97? I mean, that's it. It's spiritual. It's a matter of interpretation. He said, oh, why didn't you tell me it was spiritual? He ain't going for that. The only time people get away with this kind of crap, if you pay attention to the masses, they get away with that stuff because they know the masses are locked in the belief degree. As soon as you start talking, Jesus said it, and they get starry-eyed, and and then all of a sudden, sense don't make sense. 2 and 2 is really 3.5 because it's a spiritual approach. And fact is, 2 and 2 is 4. Old world, stop the BS. Go back and get my change, or give me them gators that you just bought. That's what's happening. So we got to get away from the naivety and understand that these fundamentals of political science are known by everyone in positions of authority. They've been running a scam, they've been running a game, and it comes from the 3 P's: priest, pastor, pimp. No, who else? Politician. The group of parasites that profiteer off of naive public, and that's the truth. And in secret, all of them are Kabbalists. Let me give you another point. Like, say for instance, you are active in business. Usually you're for somebody's in business. In any position that has influence on people, and sooner or later, because they'll be watching you, so let's not get off of that. They're always watching you. Somebody will come tap you on the shoulder, drop a little information on you, see how you respond to it. Drop a little bit more, see how you respond. Offer you into a lodge. You understand what I'm saying to you? You can step or you don't step, but that will determine how far you go. You understand? And also, if you're already in a position, whether or not you can rise in that position based on where your head is. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? So, I don't care what they tell you, you need to know how things really work. Now, the deal is, knowing this, you, being Moorish American, are not supposed to go out into this world naive and think that these people don't know, think that these black leader guys don't know, think that the reverends don't know, think that the grand sheiks and sheikesses don't know, because they're all Gnostics. And if they really about liberating these people, they'd simply tell them the truth. Leave no stone unturned, and throw the truth up, let the chips fall they may, and let these institutions fall, and the restoration of these people who lost the state be restored to them, which is what the Pope is saying. Do you understand? Now, let's work 14a. Let's deal with judicial power. Just look at this. Even when you're dealing with these turkeys. United States Constitution, Article 3, Section 1, Section 2. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. That's where your DOAO is, all clear. The judges both of the Supreme and inferior courts shall hold their offices doing good behavior and shall at state times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. Section 2.1. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming lands under the grants of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subjects. Is that not an affirmation of an international and diverse venue, i.e. that Constitution? Mm-hmm. How come people ain't enforcing this? Why do they keep on looking for lawyers? This is the law, supreme, that's in place to secure the rights of people. They keep on running to the barristers whose job is to overthrow it. Under the coup of 1861, see why we keep getting screwed? I can't hear you. Gotta get the mic.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I kind of feel like we're working from the bottom up. And so, if we have this knowledge, why can't we put together some offices or committees to go look eye to eye at these people who we know have this information and get them to make changes from the top up instead of each individual getting arrested, handcuffs, going to jail.
All right.
We don't want all of
Now,
that.
let's
do all that foolishness.
I know the nature of your question. Now, my question to you. Now, look at this and look how simple this is. Act 1 of the Divine Constitutional Bylaws for the Moorish Science Temple of America. What is it? Get in the mic. Now, notice the pause. It should roll off your tongue.
Yes.
But who was it put in power to make law?
Grand Chiefs, Chief,
Yeah.
Chairman,
Yes. Are empowered
to make law.
to make law and enforce law. If they act according to what?
Law, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
In the grand body? That's a body politic. Aren't they empowered to make law? Isn't that a regency? Have they been doing that?
No.
No.
Didn't they tell the people that draw lead didn't teach civics? Didn't they tell people that draw lead teach law?
No.
They've been telling people that it's just a religious organization and they've been playing reverse church?
Yes.
Why is it people didn't recognize that there was COINTELPRO operations right in their face? Did the prophet write caveat emptor just because he wanted to exercise in literary scholarship?
No.
That's for the people to do what? To keep their order in check. He also did additional bylaws, didn't he? It's in the back of the questionnaire, isn't it? Read it again. And I want you to see that it's already in place. Meaning that there are regencies. And when you see the contradiction or the corruption, what you're just asking, now you understand why Great Seal Order was put in place. It is structured government to enforce the national side of the movement. And it's always been taking place. What you have is such a small scale of people operative because people are running after the belief systems and the clubs. And so they think things aren't going on, is that they're not attending them.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when you read the Pope's letter, the Pope is talking about the United States of America major, and he makes a distinction between the United States of America minor. Now, I say to you that many of the people who read that don't even get it because they don't know that they're two different entities. They don't know about the coup, and they don't know the nature of the Pope's argument, although they may read that. Now, when you know the nature of it, you recognize that our greatest problem with us collectively is that for the nobility of the cause of uplifting our own people, 90% of the times we come together and our egos get in front of the cause.
Yep.
And then it breaks down, and then people start looking to reinvent the wheel. Understand this. Understand this. I want to make a point to you. So Article 6. United States of America Constitution. All debts, contracted, and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution of laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding, the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So now, are you going to go in there and talk about your religious beliefs? Exactly, because that won't apply. So what happens if you don't enforce the treaty and the Constitution, and then you start thinking that you're going to use UCCs or some other venue and bind them, and this is what binds them. They do all this stuff to get you off this forum.
But they still arrest you.
And then they violate you and then get you arguing other things when you should stay on point.
So when she's driving, she gets arrested and her baby is confiscated. What point? Because
See, already, no, already. Let's look back. Let's look back. Fraud has no statute of limitations, right?
That's murder.
Right? Now, what we usually do, we start arguing and looking for a remedy within their venues instead of going after their bond. You know what a non-judicial action is? Like, for all losses to you, time, work, stress, sit back and calculate it in gold and silver grams. Charge whoever's involved all the way up, and even the mayor for sending them criminals out there, and make bonds against them in the multiple millions. Create those independents. You don't have to go to court. Put that bond, send it to their insurance company. And then you send them an affidavit. Always affidavits, not motions. Affidavits. And with pertinent questions, you already know what questions to ask them. And if they don't respond, you give them a good 13 days. You can give them more if you feel like it. And then you post that against their bond, and it stands as lis pendens. And after a while, the wife go down the mall with the finance they robbed you of, push that card in, and the machine go burp. When that starts happening, then they'll start listening, won't they? And it can be done without going through a court. You know what the hardest thing for us to do? Get people to do that. They'll run around doing everything else and won't do the research for their bonds and insurance companies. And they won't go and get their bonds. And they keep on asking the fox, hey, wolves, I want you to come over here and tell the fox to stop eating my chickens. He didn't respond. Because usually wolves and foxes is both canines. And they both like chickens. Go through a third party. Now, let's look at this. Jawali said what? Take your places amongst the affairs of men. Does that not imply international law?
Yes.
An international venue?
Yes.
Well, have we been making complaints to the trustees of that World Trust, which is the Archbishop, Regency, representatives of the Pope? Whose subordinates are these people? Have we been complaining to them? And written for them? No, I'm just asking. I'm talking about us in general.
No.
Has it been the pattern? Oh, so that means we've neglected our responsibility in the treaty operations, which means we either are not aware of the treaty or we don't respect it. So now we're going to try to find something else, like UCCs or, well, I'm going to can't authenticate the birth certificate that they didn't authenticate. And I'm going to look at this stuff. Not that that is not valid in its argument because it's one of the stocks. But think about it. The instruments created in fraud, and then you're going to try to authenticate the fraud to try to get a benefit when your job was to enforce the Constitution and the treaty that you're ignoring. That supersedes all this stuff. So they bounce you around for years and years and years and years, and then frustrate you, which they do to people every day. It doesn't mean that the processes aren't valid in what they represent. But you notice how they always get people to get off the floor looking for this gold. This is the real golden apple right here. If you bite this one, this is the really juicy one. And you see millions and millions of people that are transferring finance to the corporate states to exercise some venue that they present to you, and they're ignoring the Constitution and treaty, which is the only thing that they're bound by. So why do you abandon what they're bound by to try to get some other instrument to bind them? Not that you can't, but I'm just saying, we're talking about basic intelligence. This is what they're bound by. And we keep abandoning it, trying to find something else, some process in commerce to bind them, when unalienable rights cannot be licensed, and they can't be transferred in a commercial platform. But I mean, if you want to, you can, because involuntary servitude is not unlawful. I mean, involuntary servitude is unlawful, but you can voluntarily be voluntarily in servitude. Because here's the supreme law of the land. And you don't believe that is, then you have a right not to address it. Also, you can claim to be something that you're not, and then try to use it, and then you'll be dismissed, because you can't use it being Negro, black, or colored, or white. Because those are statuses, aren't they? One's a legal status, and the others are legal brands. That kills your legal status. And if you don't know the distinction, or how to even use those words in context, you're also colored. Now keep in mind, do a little research with a lot of Europeans. Years ago, many of you might know this wealthy European woman named Emily Ford. She was both a philanthropist, a supporter, and writer for Higher Truth magazine. Emily Ford, you ever heard? Emily Ford came to one of my classes a few times in Jersey when I was holding classes at Brother Aline's. And she deals with a lot of, this guy,
She got
Bill
cut
Marsh
off.
and a whole bunch of others.
Excuse me.
Dealt with them.
Excuse me. Sis got cut off.
Answer the phone.
You gotta answer the phone because sis got cut off.
Class, the round table class, and she, Sister Darlene would bring her, right? And she would ask, she says, is it all right if white people come to your class? And I said, there's a lot of white people in the class. She said, well, you know what I mean? I said, no, because you're not white. But you're welcome. There's no secrets here. We're in treaty, aren't we? I said, what's your nationality? Anyway, she said, mother was German. I forget what she said her father was. At any rate, one of the questions that she asked was why some of the quote-unquote white sovereignty groups were having problems with the government, as she said. And I said to her, you just told me what your nationality is of your mother, and they're claiming to be white Christian sovereigns. It's an oxymoron. They can't use the Constitution or the treaty. That's why the judge told them you can't use that Constitution as a defense because you're not a party to it. It's not that they're blocking them from common law, but the treaty and the constitutions are wills. They are national wills. And because civics is not properly taught, people think because the power of the documents, it just simply applies to you. Status is everything. I said, you're not white. You're Italian, or you're German. But, let's talk about the truth. Your mom's German, you're German. Now, you want to talk about sovereignty? Then you got to go home to Germany. Because you ain't American. I never thought of it like that. And she cried, and I mean, not because of that, it's just that she was overwhelmed because her concepts were clear, and it's like they get caught up, gotten used to exercising the sovereignty that belongs to us for so many generations, just like our people got used to being black. And after a while, you start getting blinded by your own misinformation, although you know better. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But anyway, she would come, and she dropped a lot of information. She would come drop a lot of information. But Europeans already know. The deal of it is that we need to get us to know. Now, back to what you're saying, sis, just like when we're doing radio shows and stuff like that, and we're blunt about a lot of things, it makes people uncomfortable. Why? Because there's certain fundamental truths that once you have foundations, a child can correct stuff. This stuff is never to be complex. This is why months ago, when we're talking, you start saying me, when I saw certain confusions, I'll make the distinction between public corporation and private corporation. You must understand that in relationship to the code. And it's why when you talk in public or you talk in office of government, there's nothing hidden secret. It's not personal. It's public. Now, whatever we do privately, if I'm doing a service privately, then that's between us. But when it comes to government opportunities or government operations, that has to be recorded. Do you understand? And the only services is administrative. Outside of that, you can't sell. You got administrative course, but you can't sell anything. You ain't got nothing to sell. And you can't give no rights because you ain't got them to give. The rights already exist. Give them like that. Get in the mic so we can hear you.
The more,
Get closer to the mic.
the more I become involved, studying, exercising, I keep coming to this ultimate realization that it's the Moors that's doing the damage.
It's birthright. Now you understand birthright? The birthright and substantive right and unalienable rights means rights that cannot be bought, sold, or transferred to another. Listen. A right can't be licensed. That's feudal. A right is allodial. A privilege is feudal. That's where license comes in. Whenever you hear the word, if the word license comes into any agreement, that's not in a constitutional venue, that's in a non-constitutional, private, for-profit human trafficking venue. Distinguished from a birthright. Are we clear? This is why the phrase right of travel and license don't go together. They're opposites. Duh.
It's law.
Once you understand these fundamental principles, a child can defend themselves. When you start mixing it, they recognize you're incompetent because you don't know the difference. You understand? Now, so like, all right, say this. We contract you to make tags for us, right? There's a cost involved, right? So we transfer the cost for the tags, but the right to travel has, in fact, nothing to do with the tag. That's just for identification of a vehicle or something like that. And you don't keep paying for that over and over again. Nobody's like, nice dress. When you make your dress payment. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Once you understand these principles, if you keep it simple, understand these principles, it becomes quite obvious. That's why I did lesson number 14. Because people who don't understand civics don't really, when Drawley said, here's the truth about your nationality and your birthright. Nationality, nativity, heirship. Specific nation state must be named, right? Birthright are unalienable rights which cannot be liened by the state or corporate or government, etc. It is divine, which means government has no claim in it whatsoever. It has only one obligation and duty, and that is to secure and protect the rights of the people. That's the job. Any crossing that line is a breach. Are we clear?
Clear.
Once you understand that, half the questions that people ask would already be answered. Are we clear?
Clear.
We're going to talk about some other things in a minute. Go ahead, good brother.
Islam. I just want to share an experience I went through with my brother. I had told him to go in court one day and we go down to the baton office and file some paperwork. He said, the lady, I told him, so when you sign it, sign your name a certain way, and I said, sign it red ink. And he went down there and did that, and the lady said, well, you can't sign it like this. So then he called me out like, yo, great. And the lady was saying, I can't sign my name in red ink. I said, all right, so what are you telling me for? I said, what's up? And he was like, what you supposed to do? I said, tomorrow she's going to tell you you can't use the bathroom for the next 2 weeks. What you going to do? Not use the bathroom? He said, no.
Now,
I said, all right, then, so what you going to do?
what does that demonstrate even when they do that? It's a test to see whether this person, you understand, looked on the internet or seen some paper, start doing stuff, said, you know, I told them 2 and 2 is 4, and they said 2 and 2 is 3.5. What should I do? Do you know that 2 and 2 is 4? Do you understand the formula? If you do, here you go. First of all, you're supposed to ask that person for their bond and their charter and their superior, because they just did what? try to denationalize you in violation of international law. Not only that, you want them to put on this desk and have it posted up there, the international law, the constitutional law, and the treaty laws that says I, as a Morris national, according to my customs, can't sign in red ink. Where's the law? Oh, that's your private religious opinion?
That's true.
I think it's time for you to step out from behind that desk because I'm writing a complaint against your bond. I want your name, address, and all the rest of the kind of goody stuff.
Business card.
Because we're going to have fun. Get ready for a suit. That's how you're supposed to talk to them, and you got to be prepared to go there. Now that report is made, sent to the assistant grand chief, goes to council, goes to the antechamber, which would simply be lower parliament, modulus, and that person would be within a week receiving papers. Or grand chief or assistant, not the grand chief, but usually assistant grand chief or mufti is sent down there to deal with them already. That's how it goes. But I already know, and you know, they ain't going to do it. Why? Because they got these other spook agendas, and individually trying to get in people's pockets, trying to play emotional stuff, guilt trips, and really ain't. They really ain't. Do you understand what I'm saying?
And I also had an experience one time with a lady. She told me, "Sir, you got to print your name here and sign your name here." And I looked at the paper. I said, "Well, that's what I did." She was like, "No, sir, you print your name here and you print your name here. You got to print your name here and print your name and sign your name here." And she said, "Let me see that." She said, "Let me see your ID." She said, "Well, that ain't how you did it on your ID here." I said, "Oh, let me see that." I said, "Oh, because that's how I used to sign my name. Now I said, well, I like this today."
And you don't even tell them that.
And you left it at that.
No, you don't explain yourself. You're told, you don't tell them.
But that was before I got to knowledge itself.
No.
You know what I mean? It was,
No,
you know,
this
I
is
was
what you say.
entry
Anything that a signature is required creates a security or a negotiable instrument. You think I didn't know that, Freedom? That's how you're supposed to talk.
Yeah, see, that was before I.
This is the reason why whenever you sign anything, you do all rights reserved, etc., and sign either through it or sign it mixed in your name some kind of how. Because every time a signature is required, you've created a negotiable instrument. They know it, and you're supposed to know it too. Go ahead, brother.
Quick question, Todd. I do not sign any document that's not of my creation.
That's exactly correct.
So when they ask me for my signature, I print everything. I don't use caps. All rights reserved. That is my.
Yeah, and they can't tell you how to sign.
That's all I get from them.
How's somebody going to tell you how to sign?
Right, but say it was my document, but yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I know. But I'm talking about when they're presenting you with their instruments, any instrument, and this is important for everybody to know. This is very important for everybody to know. Any instrument created by any franchise agency of the United States Corporation Company is feudal and is designed for the bond market. Knowing it is, anything that you sign, I don't care what it is a negotiable instrument and has what is called a perpetual life. It does not stop. Just like, say for instance, like if you say you receive a statement of account that's misrepresented as a bill and they use the R, say from the electric company, something like that, right? And you write a so-called security, which is a check. And your idea that when that check is canceled out, that it stops. It doesn't. Even when you so-called think that you close an account, I ain't used that account in years, it's still operative.
Yes.
You know, our whole concept about all of this stuff is got to be corrected.
Right. And
Go ahead.
All the different Federal Reserves put out the different books, like Modern Money Mechanics, the one that out Chicago everybody talks about. There's one actually says that you really need to understand that a check is not money. Right. It's not even considered anything like that. And that's where they perpetrate their fraud upon the court.
It's a security.
Because they'll only tell them that they gave you something, but they'll say they've given you a check, is what they'll say. Well, they didn't give you anything. You follow? They didn't give you anything.
The same way.
But that's how they perpetrate the fraud. And, I mean, you know, they're all in collusion because they think you don't know.
Same thing with the Federal Reserve, it's the same thing. The note is, and even the note, like when it says a dollar bill, it's an oxymoron. Dollar is money. Bill is a debt. And so a dollar bill says dollar debt, but they know that most people can't read, right? And then it says Federal Reserve note. Note means a debt pending. And so therefore, every one acquired actually becomes, the concept is that you're acquiring more and you're acquiring wealth when actually you're going deeper in debt. This is how and why people can be millionaires, as they say, one day and broke the next day. Or that under some political auspices, they can just do a signature, jump into their account that you think is your account, and all of a sudden you're in all kinds of economic trouble overnight when you think that you have money when you don't. You actually have securities. And as a further note, in any argument in relationship to foreclosures of any type, understand that the checks, the Federal Reserve notes are de donis, they're considered a gift. And what they're doing is signing themselves as FOFR and signing off for you by your signature, accepting the Federal Reserve notes as a gift, de donis, and then acting as your FOFR trustee. And then holding you to the promissory note for future payment, which has not been satisfied. Therefore, the claim is what is called a set-off or discharge, both of which constitute a what you call postponing of the payment, which still has not taken place, and people get caught in that trickery too. And so this is why you will see them always refer to that corruption as the quote-unquote national debt. And it's called a national debt because they're actually building these instruments on the birthright of the heirs of the estate, who are the true nationals, against the Moorish Empire. And this is where you get your Treaty of Verona with the 1884-1885 conference, etc., with the overthrow of the Republic. And of course, where religion is used in a dogmatic form, and they'll say religion is being used to make people docile, etc. And of course, their agreement is with the Pope, not with Jesus. And of course, while it is not secret, it is in the congressional records. You'll see one of the three P's come out there and keep telling them that they're delivering the people to Jesus, delivering souls to Jesus, when they know that they're delivering these people to the popes of Rome. But again, this is back to naivety and the lack thereof. And so simply understanding these things, you can see how the situation or how the administration of the feudal de facto government operates as an imposter to the de jure legitimate government.
That's a question. It's a question. It's a question.
Yes. Give her the mic.
No, she's got a question.
Oh, I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
sis. Go ahead real quick.
My lecture just
Get in the
got
mic,
off.
please.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, it's just a here. I can hear you. But you, go ahead.
My lecture just got cut off this week. I did a couple remedies and they let me do it for like a whole year. And now they cut it off and they won't let me settle the matter, like make payment arrangements, they won't let me do nothing.
Write the president of the company. Always go to the heads.
I was dealing with the lawyers.
Oh,
Barristers. That's why it got cut off.
that ain't funny.
All right, what's the estate? What's the estate name?
First, I was sending my instruments to the OCC, and I believe some of the IRS, I believe, they was taking it, they wasn't cutting it off. But I think I forgot to sign two of the instruments. So they sent that to Pepsi-Cola, which is Delmarva Power. They sent it to their lawyers.
and then they sent me the instruments back. So then I did 2 checks on a closed account. And then
And you know none of those accounts are closed.
yeah, so I was going back and forth through email with the public, the Public Utilities Commission and the lawyer. And then the Public Commission, Utility Commission decided to go along with them.
All right, good. Now, did you choose to use or reference House Joint Resolution 92 now to that? Can add the public law sections. Look at House Joint Resolution.
I referenced the public law, but not the actual 192. I just said public law, public policy.
All right, now, all right. Let's back up. Yeah, go ahead.
See, very quick, they sent you the instrument back, right?
The
You
two,
said they
the
sent it back
two
to you.
that wasn't signed, that was an international.
I understand, but see, what happens is that if you send them an instrument, they have 48 hours to make it happen or send it back to you, and they were supposed to note any, what they call fatal defect in the instrument, and then you're supposed to correct it and just send it back to them.
Yes.
See,
They're supposed to tell you the deficiency.
Yeah, they were supposed to tell you, if it wasn't a signature, you should sign it and send it back to them.
Okay, so what I did was I switched over, and then I started doing a 1099 OID.
See, then they look at that as being incompetency, because you already issued the instrument on the issue, right? So you should have followed through with that instrument. Because any other thing you do at that point, they're gonna say that you're incompetent. That's the stance they're gonna take.
Because really you're transferring entries into the estate.
Also, if they stamped that instrument and marked it received, they damaged.
They got
it.
So they have to either give you.
They got it.
It's gotta be unblemished, right?
currency, or it has to be returned unmolested. So they molested it. So they really owe you the
It's gotta be
value.
They didn't
unblemished,
stamp
right?
the instrument, they stamped the bill, the statement
Well,
received. And then they got some.
That's acceptance.
Codes on
Yes,
it.
that's a.
Anything, how they receive it, is going to come back like she said, unmolested, unaltered, untouched. Just with an addendum note stating fact by law the deficiencies.
But you know, what I would do is, I would still, like I said, I would endorse it appropriately, and then I'd make those notes to it, letting them know that even though you have dishonored, see, that's what that is, they dishonored it. Even though you dishonored it, in honor, you go, you know? And let them
So
walk on
what
that.
about, I get the last time I gave them 2 checks, but that was like EFT because it went through the machine. They didn't get the actual check.
Did you sign
And they
it?
still shut my stuff off.
Well,
Did you sign
this
it?
is,
Because you
Yeah,
didn't sign the original.
You need to print.
I suggest, number one, and I know it's a little bit more difficult, a little bit more work, not to do EMTs. Do everything in physical. With a United States stamp sealed on the envelope, with evidence.
Scott, another thing, we were doing with the federal window, do the treasury. And do with the stamps like he said. See, because then you've made it an obligation to the treasury. Not that's sujure, the treasury. Federal Reserve is de facto. It's their acting, they're playing that game. So you're always gonna go back to the sujures, to the legitimate Republican form of government, because that's what you wanna talk about. You don't wanna be dealing with none of the fiction.
Now, let me ask you this. When House Joint Resolution 192, the public law, you see it codified, all right? Did you break that down into common language and send that in substance to them?
No, I took a lot of the law out because somebody was teaching me that the more we be natural and take away the law, like the codes and stuff, the better. Yep.
Whenever you see them write something in code, research it, break it down in written form, send it to them. Now keep in mind, they're already in breach because they're bound by that. Are we clear? Number one, because every so-called bill they send you is not really a bill, it's a statement of account against the estate that belongs to them, but is presented as an ex relation to you, which is what that transmitting utility is. And because they are fofers of the trust of your estate, you know, as an heir, you're demanding, because the burden is actually on them. And see what they're doing, they're claiming us as our beneficiaries of being incompetent and leaving the burden of the benefit on them. And this is where they're always what's called selling or transferring or doing transfer actions on the deed of trust that they create in order to claim themselves a trustee and a beneficiary at the same time. So look at that. Dr. Naila, give her the mic.
I have Islam. I have my comment or question actually is in a different direction, but it was from coming back earlier.
Yeah,
but can you speak to, before the night is over, the CERN project and its significance?
The what project?
CERN.
Oh, the CERN, yeah.
And its significance from a standpoint in the U.S. Is it Mount Graham, and why the Vatican, you know, what they're doing and what that has as an implication. And earlier you spoke about we not being the only ones. We know, those of us who know that we're
yes.
not what they're trying to bring to.
Actually,
and it's a two-part question.
Yes.
When you put up the four, you talk about the 4 gates, and this is just in my head. A lot of the Navajo and others say that there's 4 significant mountains in the world that are stargates.
Or nodal points, or what you call.
Yeah, does that have anything to do with those gates? You know,
yes, this is what's happening. This is what happened. As I mentioned earlier tonight, and we don't have a lot of time to go into it, but I'm sure you know what Eisenhower did, the deals that he made. Specifically, although there were other deals, most emphasis is put on Dwight D. Eisenhower. Where they allow some human trade-off for experimentation, and but different beings have different agendas. Some malevolent, some benevolent, and in between. And so they were trading human capital. This is what you see in the U.S. budget when they talk about human capital. Trading for technology. Now, what has really happened? There's one of the species that have been here actually for millions of years, where they're kind of locked in, and they haven't been able to get out. Now, what has happened is some of the ancient technologies of how we travel, particularly in this particular solar system, is by folding, or what you call energy folds. And this is what we call the plate lines, where you fold, and that shortens the time, or like you transfer,
time warps
like that. What has really happened, to cut it really short, just like Hitler, as an example, studies of the Bhagavad Gita and other ancient technologies, trying to reopen or trying to become cognate of the positions of the portholes, as you might say.
Right.
Now, they succeeded in, just put it this way, one that's opened up only millimeters, and they can't transfer. CERN is for that. To cut to the chase, CERN is to try to open up portals.
Right.
Absolutely, but what I've heard is that some were concerned about what might come through.
Yeah.
What's coming through and what might even be released. That's maybe even in the underground, under the earth.
And not just what come through. Some of them trying to get out. So it's a two-way street. And this is essentially the major part of CERN is for the wormholes. Truthfully. Now, I suspect it's not limited to that. It's also because we've been under quarantine and parts of the quarantine is being lifted, which means there's also some that are already in process and who intend to drop technology on humanity. And the debate is going on, as we speak, of us taking charge of our destiny. And so in doing so, the real history must come out, even the hybrid experiments, the dark side, and you have to look at the fear that many of those, the dark priesthood, have of being eliminated. So it's not just what comes in, you gotta look at them trying to escape. Now, with the technologies, much as ancient technologies really, but just simply been restricted, being re-exposed to the species, and then you have the problem of a certain group, I think it's about 2 of them, but one in particular, and I think you know who it is basically, who's been using the women as culture beds to save themselves because they've blown it, if you understand what I'm saying to you. But our DNA is compatible, and so that's been going on, and there's been some charges from the Federation for them to cease and desist that action, because the determination was made is short time from the Confederation point of view, not necessarily from our point of view. But for the last 500 years, there have been too many what you call visits beyond what should have been allotted. And so this is where a greater restriction in the quarantine has taken place. However, so when we're talking about them being concerned about what comes in, let's look at the other way out. Some of them are trying to escape. And so how about that?
That's fine, if that's the response. I guess the reason why I raised the question probably was more about what we, as being consciously aware of those types of things, because a lot of times we are distracted by other things, and while we're distracted by these, so-called massacres and this and that and the other, just things that are happening that, don't hit to your core as being real or valid.
Yeah, a lot of false flags.
False flags. Right, we had one just this week. That there are things going on that we really should be, I think somebody asked about focusing our thoughts, our energies. Our energies have to be pulling things up to this higher level.
Yes.
And we get really distracted about.
That's the Ascension.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is back to exactly what you're saying is from the Kabbalistic point when Dwali says the Asiatics of North America need to know their higher self and their lower self. And for them to be able to make those discernments, they must be actually taught the religious philosophies that start developing the opening of the chakras in a balanced format. And this is again why the belief systems must be shed in order to liberate humanity. Because the belief systems are actually set for by the priesthood to actually stagnate that ascension. And the people have been under the impression that belief systems were actually a development of the ascension principle, when actually it's designed by the dark priesthood, or what we call the dark angels, as a neutering or as a stagnating principle.
I was there as a pastor and an apostle. I was there.
Well, spiritually,
bringing people to that level, like that was the pinnacle.
well, spiritually, you saw yourself and you fixed that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but that's why reawakening minds.
Well, yes. And as a matter of fact, from a point of nobility and a point of honor, you know, and it's not personal, I'm just saying because it's true. That is one of the most noble and honorable things that a living person can do is to bridge that bridge, because many are incapable of that, because that's like actually coming from the dark into the light. You know, becoming, you know how like the Bible talks about those who come as angels of the light, but they're really angels of the dark. And when there's in the seed of the spirit of the being is really from the divine cosmic mother in honor, they can't bury that for so long, and that seed will come out. And you did that. And many people aren't willing to give up the few pieces of silver, you understand, for the birthright. You know, come upon this mountain, and all these things I will give unto you. You know, and you said, well, yeah, don't want to change. You know, and most people aren't willing to sacrifice, but the reward is so much greater for that honor. And you are commended for that, not just because we love you and you, Dr. Naila, because we're here, because that's a factual truth. And I do commend you for that.
I bear witness to that too.
Oh, yes.
I bear witness to that.
Go ahead, brother.
Islam, Taj. Quick question. I came across an article about the Rothschild family. David Rothschild was telling the White Dragon family to fall back in like 2009.
To do what?
To fall back. I don't know who was it about. He was telling them to fall back. But how does that tie anything into
All of that's related. All of that's related. What is happening is the transition is being made, but it must be made in such a way that the organized government and the economics on the planet don't just collapse and then cause more injury than the transfer. Because essentially the principle of money, although we know alchemically, you know, from alchemical perspective, in fact, it is gold, silver, and copper mainly, based on the sun, the moon, and Venus. Although you have other precious metals, that constitutes money, and of course the moon governs the tides, the womb, etc., and the economies on earth, and that's where you get money, and not Moneta, the Roman goddess. Is money is dealing with alchemical metals, etc., which is based in cosmology, which is really the religion and science of the earth. However, because Rome has it's sort of like when you look at the book of Revelation and you talk about the harlot. In other words, the nations of the earth been laying with the harlot, and they all got syphilis, so to speak, political syphilis. And so that means their bonds and all of their treasuries are like HIV type stuff. And so the real deal of it is that even though you have a transfer, and that is in fact what's taking place, not only on the ethereal plane, we're talking about the changing of the lords. And when you talk about the changing of the lords, you know, 7 golden candlesticks, 7 circles, 7 eyes of Allah, etc. You're talking about the rulership of the true heirs of this particular universe being removed from the dark side, etc. It is practical that adversaries make the transition in a manner, although the negatives are really trying to seek, still maintain their power, although the hierarchy knows that it's impossible to do. You still have diehards. And this is where you see in the beginning of the Pope's letter where he addresses the police officers, etc., the bar association, he's addressing the culprits who are the armed. But knowing that it must take place gradually, this is also why you have, instead of crashes, you'll have, like, say, for instance, last year they closed all of the stores of Target in Canada and used their inventory to stock Targets in the mid-north that's going to close soon too. Same thing with Sears, Penny's,
Macy's.
Kmart,
That's fine.
on and on and on. And this is why you see any of you who've been to California in late months would notice that off the port in Long Beach and in Los Angeles, they have ships, containers parked back to back for months and months and months, not offloading. Same thing with oil tankers. Same thing with them closing down Walmarts and making some network connections between the military bases underneath the ground, which they've had for quite some time. It's no new technology. As well as certain, because it's also used as what you would call an economic measure for Wall Street, because the model is ship to shelf. And keep in mind, after they set up the deals with the Kabbalists under Nixon, when he did that thing in around 73, with Kissinger and them, and causing the other nations to have to transfer all energy sales through the dollar, and then they call that special outside working called the petro. That's been broken. Not itself, the platforms upon which it operates have been broken. And so that step back has to do with saving some that got to be eliminated. And saving or trying to negotiate to save some that are on the target to be eliminated. We're talking about physical elimination of certain persons. And finding a middle ground, because it is said, because in some areas or in some venues or parts, they had this scorched earth policy that they intended to use. You take one, we'll take 10, see who lasts. And so you got that, and so the step back has to do with that area. And then, of course, there was agreement made that they was forced to re-elect Obama, reappoint. He wasn't really elected, not the way people think. He was reappointed for the second time, and of course, the threats that was made by them to Michelle and some trickery they did with what they call honeypot stuff and different stuff that they did to compromise them. Obama got back at them and exposed, the American Constitution. This is why you see him walking through the doors with the Moorish flag. He's telling the world, and then they can't touch him because the White Dragon family. That's the only reason why he wasn't done away with. They was going to do away with him. So look at it as bargaining. And so like what Dr. Naila was talking about, this is where your false flags, all of that is absolutely connected. But then also consider, because they don't one of their puppet princes in Saudi Arabia, was it about a month ago or more, whatever. And then they already gave the guy head of Comex in Wall Street, as well as the one in London, flying lessons 1 day apart. And so the network is essentially broken, but they have to kind of meter this stuff out, while at the same time they're under the Federation's considerations, where they're getting ready to drop some technology on these people that's going to advance them exponentially. It's another reason why it's important for us to kind of fix some of these things, to prepare these people for some of these stuff, because they're not going to be able to handle some of the stuff they're going to be hit with. No, I'm serious, from two ways,
they don't even kind of
from two ways, from a point of view that people that are still burdened with belief systems may not mentally be strong enough to handle what they're getting ready to be hit with. Then you've got to deal with the issue of people not necessarily being prepared to simplify their lives for this time to survive this transition period. I mean that simplify your life. You're going to be forced to, even if you don't do it voluntarily. So whatever you do voluntarily, you will discipline yourself for this transfer. So again, my position has always been, when you understand how these things really work, you know that the masses, general concept about this whole thing is so 180 degrees wrong, but it's so opposite of what they think things are. And then you got to deal with the priesthood to tell the truth that God is really gold, oil, and drugs. It is, and they've been worshiping, the idol gods that Rome gave them, and this whole paradigm of this whole God thing is totally not what people ever thought it was. It's government ordinance departments, and so all of that paradigm has got to be collapsed. Then a lot of these women and families who start discovering the sufferings they've done in these last generations and watching their babies die on the street, and then they find out that the preacher that they thought loved Jesus was actually working for Rome and was getting kickbacks for the organs of their children that's been killed on the street. And a 501c3 skull and bones agreement kickback, and they thought it came from Jesusness. Then they got worried about them being hanged on the corners. You know what I mean? So they got a lot of negotiation to do. That's the step back. And this includes, as the people find out, that the priests, the politicians, and the pimps are all friends. They're all pimps. So, you don't want chaos in the street, if you understand. And then, all that stuff, that's exactly what's happening. And so people are compromised, they worry about their job, they ain't gonna get none. So they're working this out. So this is what you got the avatars and the dark priesthood. The dark priesthood is the people who always believed in, though they love Jesus, didn't know they're the murderers of justice. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this whole thing is going to be turned around, and all these people have been funding their own enslavement, worshiping, wardship, so they got to make this distinction, right? The masses, and this and what they're supposed to be getting in those houses is
Workshop.
that's what they were supposed to be getting. So all of this unclarity will be made clear to the public, and a lot of people ain't going to be happy, and a lot of people are going to stop breathing, so they can't have that. Like they got to kind of, sort of like somebody who's a heroin addict, you got to kind of wean them off, because if you just drop them, half them are going to shock, their body's going to shock, you get all kinds of sicknesses, and it's the same exact thing. Step back. That ain't a command, that's agreement. So don't look at the command, because they're out. In other words, just like when you see the transition of the Lords, so you look at the transition of the Lords, so you look in the transition of the Nicene Council created in the constellation of Pisces, which is I believe. This is where you have your belief systems. But you have the transition of the Aquarian energies coming in, that's I know. So they can't stop it if they wanted to, because the lords or the avatars of the light are in force in this solar system. So you're seeing a reflection of that which is above, so it is below. And so, I don't know what I think that this marker is about. Worth less than.
I thought you bought some new ones.
I did, that's why I said it's
So,
this big one.
You can't find them.
While you thinking that, Brother Todd, if I could just share with the sisters, me and my queen are counseling over this whole mortgage myth crap. And they on the run, okay? So they send, they soliciting the court for continuance. And the language they're using is vacation. They want a continuance because someone is scheduling, they already have a scheduled vacation.
deny them.
I told you that.
Wait a minute, when they brought that up in Maryland, right?
Yes.
They have to give a 90-day. They just can't bring it up and ask for a continuance. They have to give 90 days. They can't get it, don't give it to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get the sister to understand is that they play the language, they play games with the language, so you gotta define every word. That's right. Okay? Every time they send you a document, you have to get your your law dictionaries and define every word, because it don't mean what you think it means in the English language. All right, and if anybody can get hold of a movie called Pontypool, I suggest you watch. What's the name of it? Pontypool.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, Pontypool. Yes, and it talks, you have to just about the English language, how it's a curse, and if anybody speak it, they die and get sick and all.
If you look in the Black Soul Dictionary, all the words actually, depending upon how it's used, if you look in the Black Soul Dictionary, if you have a specific word, depending upon how that word is used, right, it has a completely different meaning.
Yes.
As an adjective,
Yes.
verb,
Yes.
whatever like that. And the second thing about that, besides that also, is you have to learn all the prefixes and the suffixes. We're all
They're gonna bring a doula in here.
Yes.
Doula, tell them about language.
It can't be broken down anymore. But you can very easily defer the word by putting a prefix or suffix on it. And through our ignorance, you hear the word, and you still think it's going in this direction. And they took it completely off in this direction. Because this is the insidiousness.
All right, time factor, we get ready to close up.
Okay.
Anyway, the real deal of it is the workshop of mind with the compass and the square, your tools, you build character. This is where you're dealing with the symbolism of the beautiful buildings that man has built, the temples, the structures. The same principle of dedication that has been put into the masonry of putting stones together, carving stones, cutting stones, etc., cutting jewelry, etc. So it is, you're supposed to apply that to your character, to recognize this distinction between what is called the physical realm and the spiritual realm in balance. It's applied to the womb, it's applied to buildings, it's applied to character, it's applied to everything. So this is Hex Alpha, and this is Hex Alpha. And the carpenter's tools is the workshop of the mind, not worship, with mathematics and geometry. I close out. Thank you all for coming to the House of Reawakening Minds, etc. Take notes, hope we learn stuff. Use lesson book 14 most strongly. Now, listen, Better? Good, you got something, sis. I'm not even gonna worry about the pages. I'm not gonna worry about pages. I'll just get you another one. That way it ain't gonna, it's too much thought. Well, go ahead.
I'm gonna tell you about the CERN machine.
About what?
CERN.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
That, she was talking about the CERN. What it is, when the Philadelphia...
Oh, excuse me just a minute. Islam and peace, down the lane of flowers, love you.
Islam, love you too.
All right.
Yeah, the Philadelphia experiment, when they did the Philadelphia, I don't know if you heard about the Philadelphia experiment. What they did, they're in the time travel. And what that ship did, that they used, that battleship, when it went into time travel, it tore a hole in the rift, in the time rift. And other entities came back. When the Pope came to Philadelphia, I noticed that day that they chemtrail in the air like you couldn't believe. I mean, you couldn't even see it. That was the red sun. The entities could only go back in their, where they came from, through that sun. And there was a spaceship that came to get them to Philadelphia. And that's why they're spraying so that people couldn't see it. Because that's the only
Just a
time.
minute, let me make an announcement real quick. My neighbor, Amanda, she's selling her Black's Law Dictionary for 65 notes.
What edition is it?
I want it.
Black's Law, fourth edition.
I want it.
Who want it?
So it tore a hole.
You got two, you don't need.
Excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, so anyway, that's the only way that they could go back in their, through their wormhole. Now, the CERN is in Switzerland. It's 27 miles long. It's the biggest man-made machine ever on the planet. And what they're trying to do, they're trying to open a wormhole because they want to create the Big Bang. Because these idiots, they think they're gods. They want to bring back Julius Caesar. Believe it or not, that's their plan, to bring Julius Caesar back. They're nothing, okay? And they have been experimenting with it, which you've seen with a lot of the jets falling out of the sky. That medic pulled the planes out of the sky. And they said, oh, well, he was missing. He activated red or not. The guys are too intelligent. They're too intelligent to fly a plane in a goddamn mountain. They can fly it all the time. That CERN machine, when they turned it on, they shorted out the magnet, but it pulled everything out of the sky. Pulled that plane in Germany right out of the sky, in the ground. Those planes, when they explode.
Excuse me just a minute. Dr. Naila wants to announce. You got to make an announcement, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next, we have some flyers over there.
Can you pass the flyers out? And then if you can't make it, share it with someone else. Pass it
We have
out.
an event coming up next Sunday, the 13th, called Social Sunday. It's from 3 to 7. The tickets are $10. It's an entertainment venue. We have a band, a sister that's going to sing, and a sister from Philly who's an international poet. She'll be back from the Zambia next week, but she performed at the 50th anniversary of Selma. And they just had, she's going to be here, and it includes your meal, which will be a vegan meal. And if you all can come or share this with it, it's $10 from 3 to 7.
Who's passing out the flyers?
Here, you can have it here.
Also, can I just say something when it comes to the English language? We need to stop pretending that we understand. Yeah. And I can tell you that a banker called me and told me that I owed something. And I said to him, sir, you know I'm handicapped and I'm not really adept at understanding conversational English. Please send me all of that in writing. You know I never received anything.
No, because they're all fraud.
Right, he wanted to say it and wanted me to assume that I'm smart and I understand.
No,
And I don't understand anything when you're telling me that I'm a debtor and I don't understand. So we need to stop pretending that we understand so that we can look smart for these people and be as dumb